You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Yeah, obviously a disappointing loss for the guys. Got off to a great start with Chubba. Credit to Wisconsin. I thought they did some things, wore us down a little bit. Some guys got banged up for us on defense, came out of the game, got out to overtime and just couldn't get the stop. And then, couldn't convert one of those plays at the end. So disappointed for our guys. Proud of the effort that they did give. A lot of things that, we've talked about were significantly improved, but just wasn't quite enough in a close ball game.
Welcome in and good morning here on Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me.
What's up, man?
We are live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, the H&H Chevrolet stage here on Thanksgiving week.
Gosh, isn't that crazy?
It really crept up on me.
Oh, I was thinking about that over the weekend. I'm like, man, we got a short week, so this is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
But I can't believe that Thanksgiving is already here.
I can't either. And what's worse is there's only one football game left.
And that's why I can't believe it.
Regular season, right? We're crossing our fingers. We're crossing our toes. We're crossing ourselves. We're throwing up whatever thoughts, prayers we do here.
Doing the sign of the cross the wrong way if you're Robbie.
Yes,
whatever.
always. I did that on the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill feed this week. Said it'll take over for the Wisconsin game. So I walk in. I was like, hey, praying for a bowl game. Let's go.
That was the wrong hand.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not Catholic.
But you did it the right way.
Did I do it?
Yeah.
So if I do it the wrong hand, I do it the right way?
Right. Yeah.
Fair enough. So I go, yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
That you were starting to do it right there.
So, that's the worst part is not that Thanksgiving has crept up on us, but the end of the season has crept up on us as well. Nebraska just one game left in the regular season against Iowa on Friday, and we are in the exact spot you thought we were going to be in when it was 5-3, and I'm like, we're going 8-4, baby, and you're like, we're going to be 5-6, and we need a win to get over the hump to get to a bowl game against Iowa.
I'm not happy. I'm right.
I mean, you're smiling, so it kind of seems. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm laughing because of how ridiculous that claim was
at the
3
time.
weeks ago.
I mean, for both of our claims were ridiculous. Let's be honest.
Right.
But before we get to Iowa, which we'll have plenty of this week, we got to look back at Wisconsin because that was. I don't know. It kind of felt like one of those gut punch games a little bit because of how it started, right? It felt like there was an opportunity in the first half there for Nebraska. I thought they had a chance to finish them in the first half. And we'll get to some of the more granular details and stuff, but the thing that stood out to me was a couple things. And I think we talked about this when we were watching the end of the game together here at Hurrdat Sports Bar, was if Chubba Purdy wasn't injured to the point where he couldn't play all year, and we don't know if he was or not. We don't know the extent of how injured he was all year, right? All we've heard is, he's a little banged up, and Harburg passed him because he was injured, and he's kind of been fighting with stuff. We really have no idea the extent of his injuries. But if he was this level of healthy for any or most of the season, we're going to have some really difficult conversations about what the coaches saw in that quarterback room. Because, and correct me if I'm wrong here, correct me if this is hyperbole, if we had gotten this performance out of the quarterback spot, regardless who it was, in Minnesota, Maryland, Michigan State, those are all wins.
Yeah, maybe not all wins, but you're leaning toward a win more than you are a loss.
I mean, I think Michigan State, maybe you don't, because Michigan State was up 10 late. They closed it to make it a 1-point game, but you're winning 2 out of those 3. I feel absolutely confident in. And so if Chubba Purdy was available and at least this level of healthy, we're going to have some difficult conversations about what they saw, because this was by far the best quarterback performance they've gotten all year.
Hands down.
Like, not even close.
Hands down.
Right?
Chubba Purdy was awesome.
Yeah, he was very good. Like, legitimately very good. And obviously the offense sputtered a little bit after the first couple drives, but I think people are forgetting. Okay, there was a drive on the third drive of the game. They got to the 33, could have kicked a field goal, went for it on 4th and 1. I don't have a problem with that, but that was a 12-play sustained drive. They had the sustained drive before half where they missed the field goal, and they had the drive at the end of the game where they kicked the field goal to tie it, right? So those are 3 additional scoring-worthy drives that he had besides the first 2, right? So you're talking 5 drives. I think they only had 11 for the entire game. So half of his drives basically were good enough to get points. That is by far the best we've seen from a Nebraska quarterback this year. Like, it's not even close.
There was a lot of bright spots with this team, despite, what people kind of latched on to after the game. The quarterback was one. The lack of turning the ball over was number 2 for me on that list.
Which those go kind of hand in hand a little bit.
But essentially it was even the running backs held on to the football. Like there was not a point in time where a Nebraska body got caught, like lost at the line of scrimmage, and my stomach sank. No, there was never a time for that, because it just kind of, based on how Nebraska was playing, it didn't seem like anybody had the case of the Butterfingers. So that was another great, a nice bright spot. The defense, I also thought, played tremendously well. There was one little, I guess I have one little knock on them in regards to how they contained Mordecai in that game. But beside that, this defense kept you in that football game. Even though Wisconsin found ways to pick you apart on third down in a variety of moments, they still gave Nebraska a fighting chance in the end. And you also saw how much faith Nebraska had in their defense when they sent that game to overtime. Now, there's one thing I want to bring up with that too, because, all weekend long, Ravi, I was seeing play to win or play it safe. Like, it was repetitive. And then once I saw one person say it, other people were saying it. And, whether that was their point of view or not, sometimes I don't like Twitter for that reason, because people see one thing and then just believe it without crafting, their own opinion on a topic. Now that one is so generic, so I'm not going to just pinpoint that. There's another one I'll get to in a few moments, but that was probably the one example I could have seen or understood in the moment if somebody would have said it, versus the, hey, I'm going to say it after the game and here's why they were wrong. It may not have been the best idea to go all in trusting your defense for another set of I guess a set of downs. And I say that because they just seemed gassed.
Well, especially, and I wouldn't say they played tremendous. I thought they played better watching it again than I did in the moment. And you have to think, okay, like, take overtime out of it. They only gave up 17 points. That's not a crazy number to give up. Where I had the issue was a couple places that you mentioned. They really struggled on third down, getting off the field. I think Wisconsin went 7 of 15. And then for whatever reason, they made Tanner Mordecai look like this, like, scramble QB mobile, like whatever, like this guy that he is not. He is not that dude. And so their inability to get those things under control made the entire effort look a lot worse. But because of that, if you want to get a little more nuanced in the conversation about whether they should have been aggressive or whether they should have played it safe and trust their defense, I think if you see those things and say, hey, they're having a really hard time getting off field third down. We saw that in overtime. They gave up a 3rd and 8. They're having a really hard time containing Tanner Mordecai. We saw that where they got down to a 4th and inches, 4th and 1, whatever, inside the 5-yard line. Both of those things crept up in overtime, right? And so if you're trying to look at it and say, hey, what are the reasons to be aggressive here and to try and go for the win rather than, because you can just say, like, oh, on the road, you go for the win. At home, you play for the tie. Like, sometimes that makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't, right? You have to feel the momentum of the game. I thought the momentum of the game was more in favor of Wisconsin at that point, even though Nebraska did get the field goal late to tie it. So that was kind of, I was like, maybe you want to go for a touchdown here. And then the defense is struggling with Mordecai and on third down. To me, I go, that's probably a spot where that's going to come up again in overtime. That would have been my argument to go for it. I didn't have a problem with the way they played it, because I thought at that point, just to get points on the board for Nebraska after not having scored since the second drive of the game was important. And just trusting your team to do that, I was like, okay, like, let's give this thing a shot. I was okay with it either way, but the defense probably played better than it felt like in the moment, but there were some real issues in the way that they handled Wisconsin. And you brought them up with the third down and the handling of Mordecai. Those were real problems. And I don't think, and it was mostly on Mordecai, I don't think they tackled particularly well either. That was one where it felt like they got, and I don't know if they got gassed a little bit.
And maybe it's a lot of just getting bruised up by Braylon Allen, because it's not like Allen was popping off the page.
No, he had like 3 yards to carry, something like that.
240 pounds in the backfield.
Big dude.
Like that's somebody that hurts to just get run over or just be in the mix with at any point in the game. So that's when I say that they looked gassed, or maybe running on empty is a better way to say that, because they were just getting bruised up all game. So relying on your defense to make that stop in the end is a gamble. You're gambling in overtime to say, hey, our defense can do this.
Well, and the other thing is I thought that Wisconsin, after the first part of the game, sort of picked up the tempo a little bit as well. And that gave Nebraska issues, I think, for a couple reasons. One, you've got Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmacher that are really, really big dudes. When you run tempo and you've got like 330-pound defensive tackles, it weighs the most on those guys. And because they were starting to run some tempo, I thought they didn't have the ability to get guys in and out the way they normally do. So instead of, maybe you get your 20, 25 guys in on defense, but instead of having them in every couple plays, it's kind of like when you don't have a stoppage in basketball and you're not able to get your subs in, right? You start to get gassed pretty quickly when you're past the point you're used to playing. So I thought that was a factor. I thought honestly, it was ironically, even though Wisconsin didn't put up a ton of points, I thought this was one of the better examples of what Phil Longo actually tries to do offensively, which is to speed you up and get some pace and to beat you up at the same time. Like that, in a perfect world, that's what Phil Longo's offense is designed to do, is both gash you from hitting you the way Braylon Allen was, and the offensive line for Wisconsin started to get going a little bit, and to get you gassed with pace. They did a pretty good job of that. And within those circumstances, again, I thought Nebraska's defense was better than it seemed like in the moment, but you did see where the cracks started to form because of that method, with the tackling, with Mordecai kind of being able to scramble and get whatever he wants, even though he's not really that guy, with the issues getting off the field in third down. All of those things and in big moments made the defensive performance seem worse than it was.
You also mentioned how you didn't have an issue with how they handled the clock down the stretch to get.
I didn't say the clock. I said the decision to either be aggressive or take a field goal. The clock I didn't think was handled super well.
Well, okay, but those go hand in hand, right?
I mean,
to get to the result, those go hand in hand.
So what I would have been okay with, or more okay with, right, was if they had continued. I wanted them to get more plays off. I wasn't necessarily
maybe 2 or 3,
right?
Maybe.
I wasn't necessarily asking for them to take shots down the field, be super aggressive, but they were still running the ball pretty well. I wanted to give them a chance to crease one again, right? Whether it was with Purdy, whether it was with Emmett Johnson, who was running the ball well. Anthony Grant had gone off at that point, but I wanted them to give themselves another chance to crease one, to take the lead again, rather than just kind of run the time down. I was okay if you're sort of more conservative in the play calling. I thought they should have been a little more aggressive with their clock management. That would be my only pushback on that. But in general, going for the field goal instead of going for the touchdown, I didn't have a huge problem with.
Okay. So that's where I kind of landed as well. Yes, and anybody can look at how with 3 timeouts down the final ticks of that game, maybe a timeout or 2 should have been used sooner. So fans have a right to be frustrated in that moment, because look, Nebraska acknowledged that maybe I give, or at least Rule acknowledged in his presser that maybe I give Purdy 1 or 2 shots at the end zone. But I'd also say, like, don't get wrapped up in Rule's quote to his decision on not to do that, because he was just reacting to the moment. Like, this team was beat. They were down in the dumps. They were frustrated after this loss. And in search for words, sometimes you just say the wrong thing. It happens to everybody. But also at the same time, there's a little truth to it, because in both situations, and I'm going to bring up both situations now, because I saw a lot of this over the weekend too, on how the situations were completely different. Yes, in terms of the score in both games and how much time was left, they were different. But in both situations, there were no guarantees. There's zero guarantees with this Nebraska team. And no matter if you play aggressive or safe, there's still no guarantee on how the game will play out. People who have been listening to the show have heard me say all week, take the points. Take the points. Be basic. Don't get cute. Play it safe. But still, I was hit with, you can't have it both ways. You can't have it both ways, Andrew. Playing it safe is weak. They gave themselves a chance to win.
Yeah.
Nebraska put themselves in a spot to where they could win that football game, regardless of how anyone feels. They did that. Now, in terms of when I say nothing is guaranteed, how many touchdowns has this team scored, Ravi, that wasn't on a chunk play in the last 8 games?
What do you consider a chunk play? More than 20 yards?
I have more than 20 yards. The NFL's definition is 10, but for college, I'm going to make it 20.
Off the top of my head.
So this is since La Tech.
I would say 0.
So Nebraska scored 17 touchdowns in total.
Yeah.
Since La Tech. Those that weren't on chunk plays were actually 8.
Okay? So half.
Which is surprising, right? Because you see what this team has done over the past few weeks, and you're just like, I don't know about that. But why I say that still is that's less than 50% of the touchdowns that they've scored since La Tech that weren't on chunk plays. You look at any other team in college football, you're probably looking at doubling that number. Right?
Sure.
Easy double. Against NIU, 4 out of the 5 touchdowns weren't on chunk plays. So I kind of just scratched that game because I took out the first 2 games as well. 2 out of the 3 touchdowns scored in the first 2 games weren't also on chunk plays. But the point here I'm making is Nebraska currently has the 4th lowest touchdown rate in the Big Ten. So people in this game clamoring that they could have gotten 6 points or could have played more aggressive to get 6 points. I don't know if the result would have been different based on the statistics that have come before it. And so that's why when I say there's no guarantees, stop with this, play safe versus play to win, back and forth argument. Because in both situations, against Maryland and against Wisconsin, thank you. They played the way that they thought the game should have been run. They played aggressive against Maryland, and it didn't work out. It resulted in a turnover. You play it safe, you're up 3 points. Still, you're in a position to win the game, and yes, that situation's different, but Maryland's one of the best scoring teams in the Big Ten in terms of touchdowns. They have one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football who can drive down the field. That wasn't a guarantee that they were going to win that football game. Same as Wisconsin. Even if they pushed forward and stayed aggressive, it wasn't a guarantee a touchdown were to come.
No.
In fact, I probably would have leaned more that a turnover would have happened in that situation versus a touchdown for what I've seen from this team.
Yeah, I mean, with Nebraska's history, it at any given point, a turnover seems more likely than a touchdown.
So it didn't bother me the way that they played it. Yes, you can, you can pick apart how they managed the clock,
which I think is fair. I think there's fair to have some criticism there.
But I just don't think the result would have been any different than a chance at 3 points in that moment. I don't see it.
Which is, again, that's why I would have liked to see them try and get a couple more plays off, but I don't have a huge problem with how they handled the end of game. What I really go back to is it didn't seem like they had a good plan for Tanner Mordecai or a good adjustment once they realized his feet were going to be a part of the game plan. Because, we talked about this on the post-game spread after the game, but this was a guy who had less than 200 yards rushing on the season, was averaging like 2 yards a carry, 2 or 3 yards a carry. This wasn't a guy that was killing you with his feet all year. He's not the most mobile guy in the world. He never has been. I mean, I don't think he's rushed for more than 200 yards in a season in his entire career. This is just a guy that doesn't hurt you with his feet. And for Nebraska, that's where they got beat. And it didn't seem like they had an adjustment for it. That to me was the big, I mean, offensively, yes. Would you have loved to have gotten more points after the first drive? Sure. But I really didn't have a problem with how they played offensively because it was so much better than it had been for 90% of
And I
of
wonder
the
if we're
season.
blinded by that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it was like a stellar offensive performance by any
Because in the
means.
second half especially,
It bogged down.
There were too many 3 and outs.
Yeah, it bogged down quite a bit, which also fed into, I think, the defense getting fatigued, and especially with the tempo that Wisconsin was running. So it all kind of fed into one another, right? But for me, it was, I think, one of their better offense. It was certainly, I think it was their best offensive performance against a Power 5 team this year. And was that good enough to win in the end? No, because you'd like to say, hey, our defense held them to 17 points. That's good enough to win a game, and most times it should be. But we're grading the offense on a curve, right? We've seen a lot of really bad offense this year, so we're grading them on a curve from that. We're also grading the defense on a curve, though, too, right? Because of how successful they've been this year, we hold them to a higher standard. Is that fair? Maybe not, but it's what we're comparing it to what they've shown us they're capable of this year. The offense outperformed this game, and the defense, I thought, was slightly below, very specifically in the areas. And give credit to Wisconsin there. I thought the way they managed that game made Nebraska's defense struggle in those areas. Now, would you still like to see them wrap up a little better? Absolutely. Would you still like to see an adjustment, put a spy on Tanner Mordecai or something? Absolutely. But it's not like they were playing a team that plays the exact same way that every other team they've played in the Big Ten West plays. Wisconsin specifically did some things that were challenging for the defense, and I think that goes into what we saw in terms of their struggles on Saturday. We will get into a lot more Nebraska stuff coming up on the show. We've got Sam McKewon, we've got Damon Benning, and we've got John Fanta. We have you covered this morning for all of your Nebraska coverage. We'll hit a little college basketball at the end, and then, of course, we're going to play a little Shane's World to wrap up the show. Gotta lighten the mood a little bit after all this Wisconsin talk. All that and more coming up on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. 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 You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure that we got into field goal range first. You know what I mean? I wanted to make sure that we had a chance to get down. We were going to take one shot at the end zone. Kind of akin to last week. I felt good about the kick. I wanted to make sure he got in range to make the kick. Give him a chance to take a shot at the end zone and go from there. So, looking back, maybe should have called that earlier. So maybe we had two shots at the end zone, but I know a lot of people ask me why I didn't just run the ball last week and kick it last week. So, I thought we had a good play there. Billy, he gave Billy a chance, kind of the same thing we did before the first half, and then kicked it. So, we got big, ran the ball because we wanted to make sure that we were within range, and then got the first down. But that was really kind of the thought process.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are live on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill, H&H Chevrolet stage. And we are brought to you by our friends at Dingman's Collision Center. 4 great Omaha area locations. They've been in business for over 25 years, family owned and operated, and they've been first place Best of Omaha for 18 years running for a couple reasons. They invest in the latest technology so that they can work on every make and model that you've got to offer, and they invest in the community because they are from here. They believe in the community with their give back program. They give back to the community with every single car repaired. That's Dingman's Collision Center. Go check out dingmans.com for more information. Going back to our conversation, obviously, about Nebraska and Wisconsin, one thing we haven't really talked about yet is Marcus Satterfield. I touched on it a little bit, kind of questioning what they were seeing in that quarterback room. And it's kind of funny to me because people, as I was saying all week, that I thought Chubba should start this game. And this really isn't an I told you so moment. I promise, or I'm trying. I don't want it to be. But my thought was Chubba should start this game based on what we had seen from the other two quarterbacks, right? Obviously, Harburg was injured, and Sims has not had it this year, right? I don't think that's an exaggeration to say. And so I was like, yeah, let's give Chubba a shot. The unknown of Chubba is better than the known of these two other guys, right? And I heard people push back saying, this is not a guy we liked what we saw from last year. And obviously, if he'd been the better option, why hadn't he been in there by this point? And I have a really hard time with both of those arguments, right? Because number one, Chubba was obviously better than Harburg last year because Harburg got laughed at. And if Harburg got to the point from last year where he was getting laughed at playing quarterback to he at least looked functional for a portion of the season, and obviously it got away from him toward the end of the year or toward the end of his kind of run as a starter before he got injured. But to make that improvement, you're just assuming Chubba hasn't improved also. So that was my one kind of confusion from what people were saying. And then the other thing was they kept saying things like, well, if Chubba was better, then why hadn't we seen him yet? And why hasn't it's like, okay, this is an offensive coaching staff, and maybe Rule's part of this too. And I don't really know who was making the decisions there. This is an offensive coaching staff that not only specifically went after Jeff Sims, but also thought he was the best option in camp. So you're telling me you 100% trust their eyes when they're seeing whatever they're seeing in practice. And that's not to say they're wrong. Maybe Jeff's incredible in practice and Chubba struggles in practice and he's just a gamer. Or maybe this game was a fluke. We don't know, right? We haven't seen that much of Chubba Purdy play college football yet. But my point is, it's weird to both criticize like, oh, I can't believe these guys picked Jeff Sims, and be 100% okay with criticizing their eyes for that. But then you're trusting their eyes when you say, oh, obviously if Chubba was good enough to play, he would have played by now. Like, it can't be both things, to me at least. And I really struggle with this. People kind of talking out of both sides of their mouth where it's like, okay, you don't trust their eyes when it comes to Jeff Sims, but you do trust their eyes when it comes to Chubba Purdy. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me.
Yeah, so at least early on, Jeff Sims had the confidence to be a successful quarterback,
sure.
and that deteriorated over time. So that was kind of like an in-season adjustment that just needed to be made. As far as the Chubba thing, I heard a story, and this was, I want to say it was right before the season started, and how I'm going to try to give like a synopsis of how it went down. It was Coach Rule got a phone call from Chubba's dad,
mm-hmm.
and he basically was telling Coach on how this is like the first time Chubba's actually felt at home
mm-hmm.
in a program, even though he was here last year.
Right.
He didn't feel like he
different
belonged.
Coaching staff, yeah.
And that was the same at Florida State. And it was almost like that was going to just spark something new inside of him.
Mm-hmm.
And so Coach Rule had that awareness. So this was a moment that I think Nebraska has just been waiting for as a staff
mm-hmm.
to get Chubba healthy enough so that he could showcase how much confidence was kind of instilled in him from last year to this year.
Sure.
And he got healthy enough to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I'm like, hey, I don't trust their eye completely. Again, I just kind of go back to the point of this is not what they envisioned Nebraska football to look like this year. No one envisioned this to be, how things went down. Now, they too need to adjust on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
But, all said and done, I just can't stand what I've been seeing this past weekend in reaction to the game. I saw so many people out there say, I'm done with Rule.
Yeah,
I'm done. I'm done with Coach Rule. I've lost respect for Coach Rule. I'm done with Satterfield, which maybe that makes a little more sense. But
I can live with the Satterfield ones, honestly. Like I don't think you should be fired because I think the continuity of keeping, especially from year 1 to year 2.
Shoot, I saw things with Tony White.
Sure, yeah,
name attached to it. Like go back to Syracuse. What are we talking about?
Yeah, if you're criticizing Tony White, then you're outside of your mind, and I assume you were just wasted when you were sending those tweets.
But also, look, this is a staff that has got you 5 wins, has gotten your team 5 wins. What was the prediction? What was the ceiling for this team this year? 7 wins?
Yes.
What was the floor for this team? probably 3 or 4 wins.
Yeah.
So this team is right in the middle
Yeah.
of that right now. Yet we've got people out there, and I'm not saying everybody is, but we have fans out here that are calling for heads at Nebraska already. And you're watching a 5-win season. Year 1, 5 wins. A team that let's just say we'll call them misfits, right? A team that they weren't expecting to lead this late into the season. You have a foundational approach from the very beginning. You have quarterback questions all year long, as we just referenced.
Mm-hmm.
Done with Rule. What are we even talking about?
Yeah, the Rule stuff doesn't make any sense at all because, listen, you can be
really just the done with anybody doesn't make sense. If we want to make a case for Satterfield, which a case can be made,
I can understand the frustration with
it's
Satterfield.
Year 1.
I really can.
But frustration, you can understand it for sure. But still, it's year 1, and you already heard Coach say that they're not going to move on from Satterfield.
Yeah.
So let it go.
And I think that's a totally reasonable stance for Coach Rule to take because of the value of continuity, right? Now, if we're at this point next year and we're still seeing some of the same things, then maybe we have a conversation about Satterfield. Part of my frustration with Satterfield, too, is there's things in his past in terms of his track record coming here where it doesn't seem like they've improved in terms of overall turnovers on the offense, some of the play calling questions. But, I also saw stretches of him with South Carolina last year where the play calling seemed incredible, right? Where he had a really good feel for his guys and where they were and what the defense was doing. So not to say that he's never been successful, but I can understand the criticism of Satterfield. Calling for his job, maybe not. Maybe taking away play calling duties at some point. I can understand that argument. I made the argument last week, and I still would, that I think you need an independent QB coach because I think, especially if you're a developmental program like Nebraska, and QB is obviously the most important spot on the field for any team, is if you're going to be that type of program, having someone dedicated to those quarterbacks is really important because an offensive coordinator has too much to do. It was the same argument why I didn't think Scott Frost should call his own plays over the last handful of years before he gave up play calling. Being the head coach and the offensive coordinator is too much to do. So for Satterfield, I think the argument is, hey, let's take away the QB coaching part of his job so that he can focus more attention on the other stuff. And if you put him in that position to succeed and he still struggles, then you can have a conversation about maybe we need to move on to someone else, to like a Jeff Nixon or somebody that Rule's had at past spots that's been successful, still coaching in the NFL, doing stuff like that. But I can understand the criticism of Satterfield.
And you know what? I can too.
But the Rule stuff, even if you want to be a little bit critical and be like, I didn't love how the way the clock was managed, calling for his job you're out of your mind. Like, you need to go back, sleep it off, all right, and try again tomorrow. We will try again next segment here as we wrap up hour number 1 on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
I can't remember them right now. I'm sorry. You're talking about the very last one. Yeah, I don't remember what it was. I'd hate to say that to you. Pretty much everything down the stretch was some version of a twist or a pressure, just because of kind of the number one play we were trying to stop after a while was just a quarterback draw. And I thought he did a nice job. 6 hit us across the middle several times, man. So they made the plays down the stretch. I mean, he's played a lot of football. He's in his 6th year. He came out to compete, playing with a broken hand, and he competed and he made plays. So I got to give him a lot of credit.
Wrapping up hour number 1 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities. I want to give a shout out to all of our friends in the YouTube stream. Very active comment section again this morning. TK said, value of continuity. Look at Donovan Raiola for an example there.
That's a great point. Are you saying that's in tandem with the rule
with
conversation?
With Satterfield.
Yeah, and all that? Okay.
Because last year and going into the start of this year, Raiola was, enemy number 1 for a lot of these guys, for a lot of people. And, I criticized how the line was playing early in the year. I didn't think they were playing very well. Mm-hmm. But as the year went along, got about a year and a half into his tenure at Nebraska, that offensive line has gotten better and better and better. They lose 2 starters. They keep getting better and better. New Willie's out for a couple weeks. They keep getting better and better and better. This offensive line under Raiola, with a coaching staff on offense that complements his style of offensive line coaching, has been dramatic. And so you look at Satterfield, and this is the argument for keeping Satterfield, right? Is, okay, you get a little continuity. That's just, there's value there in and of itself, right? Not having to learn a new scheme, having to learn new terminology, all that stuff. Common language is a big thing they talk about. Keeping that language in place with Satterfield is a huge plus. Secondly, the pieces in place to complement what he wants to do on offense aren't there right now. Some of them, I think the wide receivers are going to get there, but they're really, really young. Maybe Chubba Purdy gets there. He still has not played a lot of football. Like I said this last week or during the postgame or sometime, Chubba Purdy still has not played as much football in his 4 years in college as Harburg has played this year. That's true. Before going into the game on Saturday, had 100 passing attempts total. This is a guy that just has not played a lot of college football yet. So he's inexperienced, even if he's not young, right? So you get more experience with maybe Chubba's the answer, maybe he's not. I don't know, right? Out of the three guys, I'm more confident that Chubba has an opportunity to be valuable next year than I am in the other two. Maybe Haarberg continues to improve, but Chubba's feel for the position felt different than the other two guys. And listen, maybe I still want them to bring other people in and compete for the job, right? But
they have to.
Yeah,
they
absolutely. At least one transfer. Obviously, Danny Kaelin will be in next year. I would imagine he's got some developing to do from what we've seen. But I would bring in at least one transfer. I'd be okay if they brought in two transfers. I'd actually prefer it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make it a battle. Make it a job that these guys have to fight for. I firmly believe, and maybe this is a little bit of one criticism I would have, is it felt like once Jeff Sims got here and Casey Thompson left, that
it was all Jeff Sims.
Yeah, not that the job was handed to him, but the assumption was he was going to be the starter, right? Once Casey Thompson left, it was, yeah, this is going to be Jeff Sims. We don't necessarily trust Haarberg. Chubba's not there, and he was dealing with the groin injury and stuff, still is. And so you look at it and say, maybe that's not what we want to do here. But I think competition brings out the best in everyone. If you can rise to the top of a tough competition in your quarterback room, I have way more faith in the fact that you can rise to the top in competition against other teams.
Well, and that has everything to do with the development of these young guys like you're talking about too.
Mm-hmm.
To bring in a competent quarterback that can be consistent will only work wonders for the Malachi Colemans of the world, the Jalen Lloyds of the world, the Emmett Johnsons of the world, all of these young guys that are seeing the field so early.
Even Thomas Fidone, first year playing, actually playing.
Thomas Fidone's another great one because he's been the safety net for Haarberg all season long. So I say all that to go with this. Nebraska has everything going right for them, despite things going wrong for them. Does that make sense? What I mean by that is in the season right now, things aren't going the way that people wanted them to go when this team was 5-3.
Mm-hmm.
But things are still going right in terms of seeing Jalen Lloyd take a big chunk play and go 58 yards for a touchdown. Seeing potentially a future quarterback of yours on the roster, or whether he starts or whether he's a backup, Chubba Purdy, be successful. You see Malachi Coleman have success already this year. You've seen Thomas Fidone take a huge step forward this year offensively. And Emmett Johnson stepped up into a role that he wasn't even going to, he wasn't going to touch the field this year.
No.
Yet he's up and he's averaging how many yards a carry? Like 4.5, maybe close to 5 yards a carry, something like that. I don't know if that's like the team total or if that's Emmett Johnson's total. But regardless, that's what the staff does well. They develop. And, maybe they were thrown into their development stage a little earlier than they wanted to be, but still we're seeing that development take place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something just to keep in mind. And I consider that a win right now.
Yeah, I think so. And it's, the Emma Johnson's at 4.9.
I was pretty right on. I was pretty spot on there, huh?
Yeah, it's 4.5 as a team before the Wisconsin game. And so, yeah, I mean, you've got a lot of development that's already been done, right? I don't know that many people that were expecting, I certainly wasn't, to see this much production out of Jalen Lloyd at this point in the year. He seemed like a project. Malachi Coleman, even super highly regarded, super highly touted, pretty raw coming in.
He's still got to catch up to the college speed.
Yeah, and he's still reasonably raw. I think that's a guy that I didn't expect to get much out of this year, and I don't know that the coaching staff was either. But all of a sudden, you have to, and you say, okay, well, this is a guy that we're ready to roll with now, and. So again, that there's value of continuity there with Satterfield, with the coaching staff, with these guys that have already developed a really tremendous amount in a short period of time, and shockingly have developed a lot in season. That's kind of the surprising part for me, is you usually don't see this level of improvement in season from guys. Usually it's over the spring or over the off season. Oh, this guy got way better or whatever. the fact that they've been able to bring these guys along in season in a way that you usually don't see, I've been really impressed with. I know that there were some questions about the Garrett McGuire hire when coming into the season. The job he's done with these young wide receivers is kind of remarkable. He's been in as bad of a spot as anyone on the coaching staff because of the situations that he's had to deal with the injuries in that room. And you still have reasonably productive wide receivers, considering everything considered with the offensive situation, like shockingly effective, considering that these guys, I mean, they certainly didn't think Jalen Lloyd was going to play this year. I don't think. Jaden Doss, I think, is the only one they were expecting to play, and he got injured.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Out of the freshmen, I think he was the one that they actually, if everybody was healthy, was actually going to play. And instead, they're all playing, and no one else is basically.
Except Jaden is going to save his red shirt.
Yes, right. You're going to be able to save his red shirt, but he's been able to play once he got healthy. Malachi was able to play, and he's been effective. Jalen Lloyd's been able to play; he's been effective. And you kind of mix this in with Billy Kemp, who is probably not had the year he wanted to, but he's been banged up. He's been dealing with different quarterbacks.
Career, right?
Yeah,
banged up.
A little bit
is
banged
his
up.
Name.
But then you've got a guy like Alex Bullock, who I get he hasn't had a huge year, but him even being available and functional and a part of your wide receiver depth is great development from Garrett McGuire as well. So, it's not, when you're talking about Satterfield and whether to keep him or get rid of him or whatever and being critical of him, a lot of that has to kind of go in the same conversation with the entire offensive coaching staff, right? Like, as much as I think Satterfield probably needs to give up QBs, I think you also have to give him credit for working with Raiola on the offensive line, working with Garrett McGuire and the wide receivers, working with EJ Barthel and the running backs in that. I mean, talk about a guy that's been in a bad spot. EJ Barthel, he didn't think Emmett Johnson was going to be his starting quarterback in game 11 or in game 10, 9, however many games Emmett Johnson's been playing at this point.
He didn't think coming into the season that AJ Allen would leave.
Yeah, I mean,
off the team.
You're looking at a position group where, so it is really easy to be critical of the offensive coaches, and there's things that they deserve to have criticized, right? That's 100%. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm not one of those we can never criticize the coaches guys, because coaches are humans. They make mistakes. A lot of times coaches get kind of too in the weeds and have a hard time seeing a big picture of something because they're with these guys every day and they get emotional about certain things the same way we do. But to say that, hey, these guys haven't done anything or haven't done a good job, you need to put it in perspective of what's actually happened.
Sean on YouTube says, feels like you guys are using an incredibly low baseline to tolerate mediocrity, I believe is what he meant there. What's our offense ranked in FBS 120? It's not that we are tolerating a low baseline. It's just that we are finding a bright spot in a bad situation. And the baseline, and you call it mediocre, and you're right, but what we're talking about, like the situation right now. The situation is you have a lot of young receivers. You have a lot of young players in the lineup, and you have a lot of a young quarterback that you weren't expecting to play this year. So it's more, for me at least, just finding the bright spot in a misfit situation.
Coming up next, we've got Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Here is the sports editor for the Omaha World-Herald, Sam McKewon.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine.
Sam McKewon.
We're gonna throw the ball, and you just stand back there and throw it where you want to go. And that kind of thing.
Sam McKewon.
Are you guys going? Sure.
Now, Sam McKewon.
So I'd love to see these guys go play one last game. I'd love to see them, shoot. At the end of the day, we're 5-6 with a chance to go be bowl eligible, play a great Iowa team. I'm excited for them. We'll bounce back. These guys, they don't quit, and but they are hurting right now, and they are hurting right now, both physically and emotionally. And but you know what? As I said, that's okay. It's part of life. We have to learn to not shy away from that, lean into it. And I bet you, Iowa's a really good team. I bet you these guys bounce back and they play hard and Friday.
Kicking off hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are live on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, and ESPN Tri-Cities. Joining us now on the Warhorse Sportsbook hotline is Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, how are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, we're doing pretty well. Now that we're, I guess, 36 or so hours removed from the end of that game in Madison, I guess, how did you end up processing? I assume you went back and watched probably more than once like I do. In retrospect and kind of on second look, how did you feel about – I actually want to start on defense. How did you feel about the way the defense played against Wisconsin? Because in the moment, to me, it felt like they were worse than they were on second look.
Well, I thought they were pretty good against the pass. Obviously, Wisconsin hit a few, but nothing terrible. It was a tackle game. I thought Nebraska tackled fairly well, but missed a few. They missed a few big ones on Tanner Mordecai, and that hurt them. They got a couple of fourth down stops. I thought the defense played all right. I'm sure there's a couple plays they would love to get back. I thought Wisconsin hit them on that touchdown, and that was pretty good. So on the touchdown pass, that was a nice play, and hit him in the right scheme. I mean, Ty Robinson's on a zone blitz there, so he drops out, and he's the guy that's he's the linebacker there on the wheel route, not gonna make a play. So that's a hard one. They just hit the right scheme and scored a touchdown. But yeah, I thought Nebraska played okay on defense, not great, not their best performance, but they're banged up. And I think they're not going to talk a ton about that. They don't want to talk a ton about it, but I think they're pretty darn banged up.
Sam, if I told you before the game Tanner Mordecai's legs would be the difference on the wear and tear to this Nebraska defense, you would have responded how?
I wouldn't have been that surprised. I mean, I think he's a scrambler, and that's why he's back out there. Let me tell you, it's not because he's a better passer. I think the other guy might be a better passer, Braden Locke. He doesn't have a strong arm, but he's not bad. Mordecai, though, what he brings to you is the knowledge of the offense, and also he can run. He's got a little bit of mobility, and Locke didn't have much. Nebraska wins that game, I think, if Locke's out there, because he just can't. He's not an escape guy. So I thought two things were really important. One, Mordecai had to play, and he was going to. And two, that Braylon Allen played. And he did. He didn't look 100%, but, A, he was a threat, and B, he leaned on Nebraska. And, every time you got to go tackle that guy is like a little hit. If you imagine a video game, it takes a bar from your energy. And so by the end of the game, that wears on you. And those don't necessarily seem like a ton of inches, but by game's end they are, and there you have it. So, I think I'm not surprised that he scrambled a couple times. Obviously, you don't want David Wright to miss that one play, and then you call a 6-man blitz there on third and 10 down, or 3rd and 11 down by the in overtime. Obviously, they're trying to get a sack and trying to force a field goal. He was able to worm his way through it, and there you go.
Sam, I'm curious how you felt about the clock management down the stretch there. A lot was made about Rule, kind of being okay with the field goal as opposed to going for a touchdown there to take the lead. Just kind of how you thought about that. And I mean, I guess whether or not you thought that was the right move there, playing for a tie on the road to go to overtime, or if you thought maybe they should have gone for the win there.
There's probably 3 or 4 alternate universes where you can unpack different things that they do there with $1:35 left at the 26. I think a number of issues inform that. He'll probably talk a little bit about it today. I don't think it's as controversial as some other people. So you're at the 26-yard line. You're certainly in the field goal range of the kicker, but he missed a 42-yarder to end the first half. So you want to get closer. And you have the 3 timeouts, but simultaneously, and this is the area where, you can go back and forth. You don't want to leave Wisconsin a ton of time.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do that, then maybe they got a chance to go down and kick a field goal. Now, Tanner Mordecai is Josh Allen, and, Will Pauling is Stephon Diggs. So maybe you don't worry as much about that. And I would have said it the previous week, is if kick the field goal there and, make Tonga Vailoa go down and get them a field goal. Make them do it, with an 80-yard deal. Same deal probably with Mordecai, but you never know. So, I think what you're trying to do there is just trying to run the clock down and not leave them any time, which they did successfully, and then at least tie the game, which they also did. Now, if you're talking about winning the football game, okay, you're on the road. Again, that's living in an abstract realm that doesn't take into account that your quarterback's a third string. He probably doesn't know the offense that well. And you don't have receivers out there who are elite receivers. You just don't, not yet. You're throwing to Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd, and they're doing this for the first time. That's the first time they've been, and the second time they've been in that situation. Thomas Sidoni the same way. So, you can't. It's not EA Sports. You can't just imagine the play and think that it's necessarily going to work. When I was inside the 10 on the video game, I'd always go, like 4 verticals and adjust every route, and I'd get what I wanted. But that is not how it works, right, with the college football game. So like I understand the thought process there. Maybe they could have taken another timeout at the 40-second mark and said, okay, it's 3rd and 1. We're going to go get a first down here, and then we're going to try to run it. We're going to try a quarterback draw. We're going to try something that maybe gets us inside the 4 or the 5. And then once you get inside there, then you got some different pass plays that in theory are safer. Maybe some other things they could have done. But at the end of the day, I wasn't that concerned about that. I'll say this, that the overtime strategy is interesting. One, I'm not sure there's a compelling argument anymore for going second. I really don't. I don't think there's a compelling argument anymore for going second. I think you can go first, and you can put your points on the board, and then you can see what your defense does. The other thing that happened is Nebraska had to go into the loud end, and it is a loud end. They put all their speakers down there in their student section and all that jazz, and Nebraska had to go into the teeth of that in overtime. I wonder what it would have looked like if Nebraska had won the toss and said, we'll play on that goal, which is on the Nebraska end, and then just see what Wisconsin's able to do with their, see what they're able to do on offense first. I'm not convinced that going second in overtime makes much difference. I just the only thing it gets you is if you get a stop and you're able to kick a field goal, but you're already in field goal range as it stands. So I'm not that. I think that's an area where I think over time you're going to see analytical strategy sort of change. I would have liked to have seen Nebraska go first in overtime and try to score right away and then put its defense back out of the field.
Sam, what did you make of Coach Rule's comments about the decision and the way that he handled the clock late in the game after things were all said and done? Do you think, based on what he said, he was actually influenced about how things went down last week, or do you think the frustration just kind of caught up to him in that moment and he may have said something that got twisted and, people took it a different way than he actually meant?
The latter. I think the latter. Although, again, let me say this. I thought they managed it. I was more okay with what they did against Wisconsin, far more okay than I was the week before.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah. So there you go. I mean,
no, I'm with you. I'm with you.
It was the latter. And again, those are things that he has paid the money to do this stuff. And I tweeted that. I was like, this is why they're paid the big bucks, is to figure this out, and to figure out what they're going to do. But the point at which I tweeted that was with 13 seconds left. It's like, okay, you got your plays. And I thought maybe they'd try 2 plays. They only tried 1. There was intriguing clock management at the end of the first half too. These are not easy things to manage. And those are the decisions that Rule was paid to make. And I think that going for the 4th down early in the game, right decision. Play didn't work. So I think he makes a lot of good decisions, and so do a lot of other coaches. Happen to think the 3rd down one last week probably wasn't the play, but he's paid the money to make them, and that's an area where you're always trying to get the best you can. It's funny. What I think of a good game day coach isn't necessarily the best coach in the NFL, and culture building and all those things matter. I think Mike Vrabel's about as good of a game day coach as you can get. He doesn't have a very good team because he hasn't got the quarterback position right. But that guy knows how to coach him, and I think Rule's done a nice job of coaching the culture. I don't know where he ranks as a game day decision-making coach. He seems to be pretty good, but we'll see. I think he made an objectionable decision last week on against Wisconsin. I didn't view it that way, but I know a lot of people did, which is interesting.
We're talking with Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Let's move on to the quarterback position. I know that's a place that a lot of people were talking about, not just this week, but in obviously the entire season. Just how did you feel about the way Chubba Purdy performed in his first start of the year?
His best quarterbacking performance of the season. So that's how I thought he performed. obviously he must be really banged up. He's not played before now. And my sense is he is banged up. He's playing through a lot. So, that's too bad because he played better than he played better than Harburg has the last 3 weeks. Now again, I'm not knocking Heinrich. I think Heinrich's pretty beat up too. I don't think he's been quite the same player since fourth quarter of the Purdue game. To be honest, or maybe even the third quarter. I can't really remember, but he got rocked in that game, and he got rocked in a lot of games. And Sims has just not been the guy that he was at Georgia Tech. So I thought Purdy played well. I thought he did a nice job scrambling. I thought he let loose on the two quick post plays right up the middle of the field. Didn't hesitate to throw it. Got to throw that thing quick. He did. Hit his back foot. Thought he did a nice job with the quick throw game. After camp, kind of thought that would be something they'd go to on Saturday, and they did. And I thought it worked nice. Thought it was a real nice stuff. Would have liked to have seen that earlier in the season. Didn't. So yeah, I played well.
Sam, as you kind of assess what took place over the weekend, and outside of just Chubba's play, how do you balance the criticism toward the coaching staff with the fact that this is theoretically a team with a bunch of third stringers at the skill position? Because I'm seeing a lot of back and forth, whether it's on social media or even, people commenting on our show today about how we kind of have assessed this offense this season. And what one side believes is the fact that Nebraska's not putting up the points that they should be putting up. But in my point of view, they have a bunch of players that are a bunch of misfits that they weren't expecting to even see this season. So how do you kind of balance those two things?
I think that it is tricky because certainly there's things that are less than ideal. The quarterback position is the one where I think the first camp is probably right, because the guy that Nebraska selected to be the starting quarterback has not played well. And it isn't just that he got hurt. It's that when he's been healthy, he has hurt. He has not played well at all. And so that one's on the staff because Jeff Sims got healthy at some point, and they chose not to play him. And then when they did insert him against Maryland, he turned the ball over 3 times in like 5 possessions. So that was on the staff. I think a lot of it, the offensive line's been relatively intact. I know Piper got hurt, but I think the line's been pretty good. I think they've blocked well. I think they've had a nice season. People are always too hard on them. And then, the stuff with the receivers and the running backs is real talk. And even though Anthony Grant's still healthy and he was the starter last year, I think there's some reasonable arguments there. It's hard to get old at receiver when you're young at receiver. You just have to get there. You need reps and time and reps and all those things. And Coleman and Lloyd are coming. They're coming along. The first year of almost every freshman receiver is hard. Marvin Harrison Jr. did not have a great freshman year. It's just hard. And so that second year is when they usually take the leap. And then hopefully that happens there. Nebraska has chosen to be an aggressive offense, right? So they're aggressive. They try to make big plays. Doesn't always work. As a result of not always working, they turn the ball over. Marcus Satterfield's offenses have long been turnover offenses. They've also been offenses that make big plays. And so that's part and parcel of what you got here. I think I don't know that people would be more satisfied if Nebraska had, Iowa or Northwestern's offense, but Iowa and Northwestern don't turn it over the way that Nebraska does. I think Northwestern, I can't remember how many turnovers they have, but not many. I think they have 6. Maybe they have more now. But that's the difference, is that Nebraska is a risk-reward offense, and they've incurred more risk than reward. And I can understand why people are frustrated. At the same time, the culture that they're trying to build appears to be set almost entirely in concrete, and I think that culture is good. You, with the transfer portal the way it is, you can go fix it, and they can go fix it. They can go fix the quarterback position, or at least get it better. And that's something they'll have to address in the offseason. I think they can get better at receiver by getting older. I think at running back, they'll get healthy again, and we'll just have to see. Anthony Grant's done, so this will be his senior day, and then we'll just see, how Gabe Irvin comes back, whether Ramir Johnson wants to come back. Emmett Johnson, I think, showed some good things this year. So, people can be critical, but they should be mindful of the things that are in place. The one thing that we can all agree on is quarterback. That was the room. The guy that started the season wasn't very good. The guy that came in actually did some really fun things and did some good things. And then he got hurt. And I think he just didn't play very well after he got banged up. And then Chubba Purdy looked pretty good, but he's been hurt all year. So it's a mixed bag at quarterback. But the fundamental truth is they picked Jeff Sims and they let Casey Thompson go. Now, Casey got hurt. But they let Casey Thompson go so they could pick Jeff Sims, and Jeff Sims hasn't played well. And that's on Rule and Satterfield. No, they'll have an opportunity to fix that in the offseason.
Sam, speaking of the quarterback spot and choosing guys, if you had to place your bet on any of the three guys to be a starter next year, or you would take the field, so anybody that's currently not on the team versus anybody that currently is on the team, are you taking the field in terms of who takes the first snap next year?
I'll defer that to a week or two from now, and I think some of it relates to health. I think we need to know what Chubba Purdy's surgery would be, if anything, and then I think we need to know what Harvard's health level is. I don't think it's just an ankle. I mean, I think the guy's tougher than nails, and it's taken a lot this year. So I would not put any odds at this moment on Jeff Sims being the quarterback. So, I'm maybe more optimistic than some. I've watched all the quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and I think Harvard's got tools. I think Purdy's got tools. And if you think you're going to go out there and here's the other question, and this is something I'm going to try digging into, guys, in the next week or two. You need to figure out what the NIL commitment's going to be, because in order to get one of these guys, and the Texas Tech quarterback just went to the portal, you better pony up a lot of money. It's not going to be cheap until they get NIL reform in place, and I don't think they're going to by the time the portal opens. It's not going to be cheap. So the Tech guys in there, one of these two Arizona quarterbacks is going to be in there. I guarantee you. They got two. They're both good. One replaced the other. One of the Arizona quarterbacks is going to go into the portal. Probably one of the Kansas quarterbacks going into the portal. Jalen Daniels says he's coming back. That probably means Jason Dean's going to go in the portal. One of the two Missouri quarterbacks is going to go in the portal. So you're just going to have to see who goes in and then how much money you're willing to pay. Because I don't think Jeff Sims probably, I know he got the Amigos deal, but I don't think Jeff Sims necessarily cost top dollar. How much does Nebraska want to pay, or how much does their 1890 operation want to can pay for the right guy? I think Danny Kalen is coming in. I think Danny deserves a redshirt year to get stronger. There's lots of things I like about Danny's game. I don't know anything about Zane Flores' situation at Oklahoma State. That might be a shortcut NIL-wise. Maybe wouldn't cost as much, but I don't know what. But he wouldn't be any more experienced to come in and do anything than Chubba. So if you're talking about a transfer, you're talking about getting an old guy who's going to cost $1 million. And the question is whether Nebraska wants to do that. I don't think they do, but maybe they do. I don't know.
That Amigos deal, what is that? Like, you get your food, but then you have to give it back? Is that the Jeff Sims deal?
Well,
I'm not too sure.
He's a good guy.
I know he is. I know he is. I'm just poking fun.
It's unfortunate that he just hasn't been right. I don't really know why. He wasn't right in the Minnesota game. I don't know. Maybe this wasn't the offense he thought it was going to be. There's part of me that thinks that. I don't. Maybe he thought he was going to go into an offense that was more spread, more throwing the football, kind of like what Toledo does or something like that. I don't really know, but I don't think he's a great fit. The way I would describe Nebraska's offense is they don't play with much tempo, so each play needs to be well executed. And there's a lot of things within the components of a play, and that's just not Sim's strength. Sim's strength, I think, would be playing an offense where there's some tempo, and he can get going and get the juices flowing and hit 2 runs and then hit a pass. And I just don't see that with Nebraska's offense. I don't see a fit.
Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Sam, we appreciate it as always. We will talk to you again next week.
All right, take care.
Thanks, Sam.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World-Herald. Coming up next, we're going to talk some more Nebraska football and some high school football with our good friend Damon Benning. He will join us.
He's on the call tonight, right?
Yes, he's on all day today, and then our guy Vers is on tomorrow because Vers is coaching today and DB is coaching tomorrow. So they're just flip-flopping roles on that Nebraska public media. We'll have DB coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back.
Purdy to throw. Feeling the pressure, flushed out. Purdy on the run. He's got wheels, and he's got the first down. And then some, 55 yards. Purdy to throw.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Purdy to throw. Feeling the pressure. Flushed out. Purdy on the run. He's got wheels, and he's got the first down. And then some. Purdy turns on the burners. Pedal to the metal. He's in. Touchdown. 55 yards.
We're halfway through the show here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We're on AM 590 ESPN Omaha and ESPN Tri-Cities. A reminder, using your seatbelt saves lives and prevents injuries, but only if it is worn properly. Make it click. This message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Joining us now is our good friend, Old DB. What's going on, buddy?
Good morning, fellas. How we doing?
Good.
Oh, we're doing all right. You know, I wanted to start off with high school here with you. We've been going Nebraska heavy for the first half of the show, and I know you're headed down to Lincoln right now to call some games, right?
Yeah. I got Stanton and EMF Exeter Milligan up first. So, I mean, it's going to be a long day, but looking forward to, I don't know. I like Lincoln, right? I like high school, so no better place to be. I'm fortunate, man. It's tomorrow night. I'll have been in 8 of the last 11 of these as a participant somehow. So that is, I enjoy Memorial Stadium for state championships.
You know, DB, how are you, okay, as a father and a coach in this moment, like balancing the emotion of, you know, this game and, you know, how far you've come as a coach for one, but two, seeing as this is Caleb's last game in a West Side jersey, how do you kind of balance those two things in the stakes of this game?
Yeah, it's interesting. So this is the first time, I don't know, maybe my phone is tapped. This is the first time this morning is the only time he's ever referenced this being his last game. He's, you know, I asked him about breakfast at school. I told him I was leaving. He said, feeling great. I'm fresh. My legs are good, but it's kind of crazy. This is my last high school game. And I looked at it, my phone, and I was like, is this just a time for a dad to be a dad and listen, or is this a coach? What do you think I did? I was a full-fledged dad.
Yeah, doesn't shock me one bit.
I said, hey, bud, love you a ton. Leave it all out there at Memorial Stadium one good time. Just know that it's not goodbye. It's more like I'll be back. And he gave me the fire emoji, man. We're ready to go. So I think we've practiced his whole life on channeling his emotions and how to stay in the moment. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. And I'm excited for our team.
DB, we'll stick with tomorrow real quick before I do want to talk about Bennington and Scott tonight. But tomorrow night, you know, you're always good about being objective, even though you're involved with these games. What are some of the challenges that Elkhorn South presents? Because I know myself included, we all expected this to be a West Side Millard South rematch. Elkhorn South spoiled the party. What are some of the things they're good at that could challenge you tomorrow?
Yeah, I know this isn't going to be a popular opinion, but 100% honest, knowing what I know about the programs, they may not have maybe the high-end talent like down the road, but in the moment, like for tomorrow, Elkhorn South is a tougher matchup in my opinion for us. I felt like there was some things the next time around we would be able to do against Millard South. Remember, they only had 131 yards total offense.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and everybody kind of had the impression that they played us close and they controlled the line of scrimmage. Well, they couldn't move the ball, you know, and so we kind of liked that spread, kind of one back gun look. But this team tomorrow is a handful because, as you know, we play an odd front, and pay close attention because if we get out of that odd front tomorrow, then we're kind of in trouble because this is a team that will line it up, they'll tank it at us. They run a lot of scooter, a lot of misdirection, a lot of gut, like tackle guard pull. And Bousquet, he's a really, really good back. So I think they pride themselves on wearing teams down. And we haven't been in a lot of deep water, right? So it's a unique challenge. I'm really looking forward to it. We get a chance to, I think, do some things with our secondary that we haven't been afforded the luxury to do, so we can get in the box, I think, a little bit. I think we can free Caleb up to do some things against the run game that will really help. So it's a heck of a cat and mouse matchup. They're so well coached. They do the right things and they don't beat themselves. They got good special teams. It's a good football team. Duda's good player. Prohaska's good player. Ashton Murphy. They got some guys.
Dudes.
So yeah. So I think up front is where we'll have to make the hay. We just love the fact that, all these violins are out and it's woe is me and Elkhorn South doesn't have a chance. I'm like, listen, man, nobody believes that, right? At least we don't. And I know they don't. So I don't even know why people bother. It's like, it doesn't work, right? Like they're locked in and we're locked in. We're just going to play football.
DB, let's transition over to Class B tonight. Arguably the best storyline of all the state games. Bennington Scott, a rematch of week 1. All week, or at least over the past 2 weeks, we were talking to Sauter, and he's like, if you want to beat Bennington, you got to score 21 points. You have to. But as we know, Scott had him on the ropes in week 1, and they didn't.
I don't think so tonight. I would be surprised if either team gets to 21. Bennington is electric defensively, and I think Scott's game plan this time around will have enough wrinkles to present some challenges. And remember, that game was in essence decided on a real iffy call, and so I think both teams have been locked in. Bennington wants to prove that was no fluke. We're for real. We have this win streak for a reason. Winners win. And Scott's like, okay, hey. You guys are a great feel-good story, but we haven't gone anywhere just yet. A lot of people intimate our demise, but lo and behold, here we go again. So that'll be a ton of physical play. I think both teams pride themselves on toughness. They're both well coached. Coach Kale's a stud. Term will have those guys ready. He'll have to manage his emotions. It's Bennett's last game. So it's a lot on the line, but expect a lot of physical style of play. I don't know if 21 gets it done tonight.
DB, I'm curious. I'm sure you've done. I mean, you probably didn't even have to do too much homework because you've probably been watching these Class C games and whatever throughout the year anyway. So I'm not even sure how much you had to catch up. But what are some of the storylines from these other classes that you're kind of really looking forward to getting to see and explore today as you're on the call?
Well, so there's a couple. I really like. Why not? And Samuel Stedford, toxic quarterback for Sandhills. His dad's a coach. He's so good. I mean, he's just breaking touchdown records after touchdown records. That game could be kind of a pinball kind of game. And I love it, right? These coaches, they send me their film on Huddle, and I get a chance to study. And I know it drives our Westside staff crazy, right? We have like 15 games under the miscellaneous file. And they're like, what in the world? But I just want to make sure we do a good job on the broadcast for these guys. But I think, Boone Central has been so dominant, but I like Wahoo's toughness. I think Lubin and some of the families that I've had a chance to know in Wahoo Pub over the last handful, 10, 12 years, kind of got me interested in that program, especially with Newman's dominance. I was like, oh, come on, public school guys. So that Boone Central Wahoo game is going to be fantastic. But keep an eye on Wynot and Samuel Stedford. I know they're not household programs, but man, I think that game offensively has a chance to be spectacular.
DB says, "Why not pub?" or Wahoo pub, and I think, oh, he's out, sharing a drink with the locals. No, he means public schools.
Yeah, 100%.
Hey, DB, I know we're going to have you for the next segment, but we can even carry this over. I want to talk a little bit about the Husker team. I've been waiting to ask you this, because you're the only one that actually could react in the moment because you had to speak to it. How important is understanding nothing is guaranteed for this Husker team based on everything that you've seen over the last 2 weeks?
Oh, I think it's paramount, right? Like we make a lot of assumptions. And remember, anytime anybody talks to me, I don't talk about Nebraska like a fan. So sometimes I get my opinions or what I believe is not always meshing, but as a player and a coach, I look at it different. There are no guarantees, and we have to remember that when we talk about what teams should do in crunch time.
DB, we're going to keep you for the next segment and dive more into Husker football. We appreciate you sticking with us. We'll be back with more Damon Benning here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back.
People can be critical, but they should be mindful of the things that are right. People can be critical, but they should be mindful of the things that are right.
We will be
people
back.
Can be critical, but they should be mindful of the things that are right. People.
You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Wrapping up hour number 2 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We're on AM 590, ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, as we are rejoined by Old DB. Want to remind you, we're brought to you by the Beanery, 4 great Omaha area locations: Gretna, Papillion, Ashland, and 168th and Giles. Locally owned and operated. They roast their own coffee, and they're way more than just coffee. They've got hot, iced, frozen drinks, and they've got some snacks for you: muffins, breakfast sandwiches, even some options if you're gluten-free or vegan. Make sure you check out the Beanery, or you can email them for more info at thebeanerycoffee.com. We are rejoined now by our guy DB, and I know Andrew wanted to follow up.
DB, yeah, going back to the nothing is guaranteed, because I feel like once that's comprehended, it's easier to see why Nebraska managed the game as they did down the stretch. I saw too many playing it safe, isn't playing to win, and I just don't agree with that.
Yeah. So it's twofold, right? Because in the moment, real time, I'm like, you fundamentally, with 3 timeouts in the bag, and Wisconsin inexplicably calling timeout with 1:35 left, you have to run more than 4 plays, including, the 5th being the field goal, right? So whatever the philosophy is, it has to, or whatever your explanation is, it has to fit kind of what the clock and the play situation revealed. So if you take Coach Rule at face value and he says, hey, listen, you know what? I wanted to make sure we were in field goal position first. Okay, check. Then after that, I wanted to take some shots, or at least 2, maybe in hindsight. That's where the disconnect was. So right there, he's letting us know I probably would do it differently if I had to do it again, right? Because it wasn't perfect, and he knows. I mean, I'm with these guys. I'm right there on the bus. I'm on the plane. I get a sentiment. And so for as upset or as much in disbelief, I was shocked. I mean, real time. I'm like, wow, Wisconsin did us a solid. They called it timeout. And I asked Teddy LePay afterwards. We were walking on the elevator, and I go, I said, how about that? He goes, yeah, they were just in disarray. It kind of seemed to be like that a couple of times with where we used our timeouts. And I went back with him, and I said, the 32 seconds that elapsed or whatever. And he said they thought after the first timeout that they called timeouts to run the ball, because they felt like the run game was going to be there. But so everybody was kind of trying to figure out what Nebraska was trying to do. But I just rested in the fact that, right, wrong, or indifferent, I think Coach Rule in the presser was basically saying, hey, you know what? We took 1 shot for sure. Probably should have got 2. There's probably maybe a 3rd play, a 4th play you can get in there. I just think with 3 timeouts in the bag, if your plan was to not give Wisconsin the ball back, then it probably has to go different from an elapsed time standpoint. But it's hard, guys. You have to trust that your young guys are going to do what they're asked to do. You're going to have to trust that some of your inexperienced guys are going to have to all of a sudden show a little moxie and a little poise in crunch time. And he I don't think he clapped back, but in typical Coach Rule fashion, I think, he said, hey, remember last week, we were second guessed for being too conservative. He's not explaining his actions. What I think he's saying is it's the fickle nature of having the of revisionist history, right? Like, hindsight is beautiful. Real time, we're not sure what we want.
DB, I'm curious what you thought about the play of Chubba Purdy. Was that fool's gold to you, or do you think there's actually something there with the guy that we hadn't really seen? I mean, hadn't seen it all until the last drive of last game, and then this week.
Yeah, so that I think that's a lot of who Purdy can be. Now, tape, well, obviously, we'll see, right? The more you're on film, the more people will get a chance to prepare. But listen, remember the last couple of times we saw him, he's markedly better, right? I remember in the spring game, I'm like, man, when he's off schedule, it just doesn't seem like this is going to go well. Like, he's got to get the ball out of his hands. But what did we see on Saturday? It's like, wow, his ability to improvise and kind of be creative a little bit, not bad, right? The whole throw that he threw to Jalen Lloyd, not bad. So for all the consternation and hand-wringing, and believe me, Coach Sat and this staff, there's plenty of room to criticize. But I just think it's interesting in one vein, we criticize quarterback development and quarterback play and quarterback judgment. Purdy's considerably better than the last time we saw him, and that didn't happen by accident. Harburg is considerably better than the last time we saw him, and that didn't happen by accident. So the thing, it's like I tell people about my personality, right? It's like I would joke with you guys. You don't get this lifestyle without me in it, right? So you're gonna get the all-in guy, the loving guy, the emotional guy, the passionate guy, but you're also gonna get the guy that, hey man, if I'm not in a good spot occasionally emotionally, I'm going to do something that's going to drive you up the wall, right? So you can't, it's my job to make sure that I limit those opportunities because I rev the way that I do. It's in the same vein, it's like Coach Satterfield and this offensive staff. I know where we're not good. It's up to us as a staff to continue to grow and get better in areas that we've struggled. And for them, I think it's trust, pet plays within the specific family group of play calling, and sequential play calling. Like, that's the area they have to grow. I don't so much have qualms with, like, development or tutelage or anything like that, because if we're honest and we step back about 30,000 feet, with the exception of Sims, and you cannot control emotion, the other quarterbacks are better than the last time we saw them. So development has to be occurring. It's kind of like why I didn't understand the maligning of Raiola. Clearly his offensive line is getting better. Like, he can't be a non-developer and guys get better. You can't be a non-developer and be able to play 8 or 9 guys. So they have to grow. And my opinion hasn't changed. It's the same as it was in preseason. We're talking about the wrong things. They're going to have to do this with defense, and this offense is going to struggle to generate chunk plays. I've said that since fall camp, and it continues to be an issue, and that's back when they were healthy. So, I mean, it kind of is what it is. The off season for them to take some self-eval is going to be interesting, and you watch. This will probably come back to haunt me. This game is tailor-made for Nebraska to win. It's what they do. They get a tough team that thinks they're tough. They're at home, and it's a culmination of 3 things that Nebraska's culture always talks about. Go 1-0. Well, guess what? This is your last game of the year. So there's the practical application. You hate Iowa. They kind of owned you. Guess what? It's Iowa. They're coming to town. You win, you get to go to a bowl game. Guess what? There is no the next one out of however many. This is it. This team will dial in. And remember, where Nebraska was bad with Mordecai, I told you guys, remember when I went up to Wisconsin and watched a couple of their practices in the offseason?
Yeah,
I go,
sure do.
Mordecai he is athletic. Like, he was just running around making plays. That's exactly what he did on Saturday. And I was like, I feel like I've seen this before. So for this team on Friday, there's I'm telling you, they are looking forward to this. Now, how healthy they are, we'll see. There was a whole lot of pad cracking going on Saturday night. And Nebraska is a mash unit. They'll obviously be without one of their linebackers, and we'll see what happens with AG's health status. That play did not look good either. But, man, listen, they were bringing some drama, and Iowa is tailor-made, and what's probably going to be a bad weather game. This one, it would be so Nebraska-like with this staff to rally one good time and find a way to win this game.
Yeah, DB, it almost seems like this one's got like 9-6 written all over it. You touched on something there with the offense and the sequential play calling that I wanted to touch on there, because one of my issues with Satterfield has been, it seems like he moves away from things that are working before he has to. Is that me being a fan, or are you seeing that as well?
No, there's something to that, right? So, yeah, and sometimes it's just people's personalities, right? So for him, I think it would it would serve him well if he would almost get bored calling plays, right? Run it until it doesn't work, then move to the counterpoint. So I think that's the way that they're going to try to continue to build this offense. But it's funny. There's a couple of these guys that I told in the offseason, what's Nebraska's prototypical quarterback that they're looking for? And I joked with my buddy JB in Kansas City. I said, they're actually looking for a Purdy type. Athletic enough, kind of so loosey-goosey, he acts like he doesn't know any better, but can still spin it a little bit. That's the kind of guy that they're looking for. And listen, I'm not here to say that Purdy is the answer to all the choices, but his athleticism and his mentality fits what they want to do. It's just, can you get him to practice enough over the long haul where you know if he's not at practice or if he is at practice, right? Like he just kind of has one of those go along to get along, I'll do whatever. His next phase in growth is like, I want to be the guy, teach me.
DB, we appreciate the time as always. Good. Super good stuff there. Good luck tomorrow. I'm sure we'll be in contact. Drive safe up and down to Lincoln. I know you're going to be there a lot the next couple days. And we look forward to hearing you on the call tonight.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Keep doing what you guys do.
Thanks, DB.
That's our old guy, our old friend DB.
You called him an old guy.
Well,
I didn't.
He likes going by
Shane,
old. He likes going by old DB.
Make sure to mark that down. Ravi called Damon Benning old.
That's all right. Next up, we got our guy John Fanta. Going to do a little college basketball here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. Sports Radio.
Pryor bounce past the Shed. 4:17 to go. Moving by 7. Shed to Pryor. Pryor attacking back out the Shed. Left wing for 3. Got it. Jamal Shed drills the 3. On the turn to the left. Foster. On about a 3. Step back to the top. McKewon will launch. And hit again.
We will be back. We will be back. Welcome to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Pryor bounce pass to Shed. 4:17 to go. Cougars by 7. Shed to Pryor. Pryor attacking. Back out to Shed. Left wing for 3. Got it. Jamal Shed drills the 3. Undeterred to the left. Foster thought about a 3. Instead, back up top. McCain will launch and hit again.
Kicking off hour number 3 here on Hurrdat Sports Radio. I'm Ravi Lulla. Andrew Rogers here with me. We are on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and for hour number 3, we're on KFOR in Lincoln. We're brought to you by Dyer Law. If you have been hurt in a personal injury accident, you can count on the Dyer Law team to provide you with a helping hand when you need it. No matter what you're dealing with, call the Dyer Law team at 402-393-7529 or visit dyer.law to chat with trusted professionals about your personal injury claim. That's DYER.law. We are efforting our friend John Fanta here. He is one of the premier voices in college basketball. He works for college basketball on Fox, as well as does some commentary for the Field of 68. Really, this is one of my favorite college basketball weeks of the year because you get like Maui, you get all the exemption tournaments. So you get some really marquee matchups.
Competitive basketball.
Yeah, some great matchups in basketball. And it's honestly one of my favorite college basketball weeks of the year.
Yeah, and before we even get into that, because as you said, the Maui matchup is incredible. I mentioned just the names to CL Brown last week, and you get the best of 4 of the biggest basketball conferences out there. But you're getting a lot of competitive basketball right now too from the local teams.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll start with Nebraska, who was over at the Pentagon just this weekend against Oregon State. And, early points in that game, you're kind of like, okay, like nobody's really like finding rhythm just yet. And then you blink, you go to the bathroom, you go get a snack from the fridge, you come back and Nebraska's up 30.
Yeah.
Right. Or at least that's what it seemed.
Yeah.
It went from 15-13 or whatever it was to 38-15 in a matter of one trip to the fridge. And, it's funny because you go back and watch the sequence and you just see how much chemistry this new Nebraska team already has. And that's kind of what I'm most impressed with. Is you get a lot of these guys out of the transfer portal. You get Mast, you get Alec, you get Williams, who had his best game in a Husker jersey. And instead of everybody, trying just to make a name for themselves, because a lot of times you get that with transfers, they come in and they just want to like prove to people why they belong.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's almost as though the Huskers are like, no, everybody's at the same.
Everybody has a
same
role.
spot.
Everybody has
Right?
a spot on this team.
Yeah, no one's on a higher pedestal, even though Keisei Tominaga came in with all the hype, which I thought he shot the ball fairly well and confidently, especially in the second half of that game. But they didn't really need him to be a god out there on the floor because they had so much production everywhere else. And because of their ability to move the basketball and have the margin they did in the assist to turnover department, there's not a lot of games Nebraska will lose if they play basketball the way they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be some teams that they're a little overmatched with, right? And Oregon State is not a great basketball team. They're a Power 5 opponent, so it's a good step up in terms of tests just from where Nebraska had been at. But this is a Oregon State team that has struggled a bit, but Nebraska answered the call and they were able to go away from home for the first time in the neutral site game in Sioux Falls to play Oregon State. And listen, the defense has been really good all year. They haven't allowed an opponent over 63 points. And it's been, I think, really encouraging to see, like you said, kind of everybody is finding their roles. Even Tominaga, who hasn't really lit the world on fire yet, although he shot it well, but only 8 points, only 6 shot attempts. I like that he's not forcing it. I like that the other guys are stepping up. You mentioned Bryce Williams had 25 points. Mast had 15. Juwan Gary coming back had 12.
Yeah, I forgot about Juwan.
That was a big one. That's going to be a big piece for Nebraska moving forward as well. And you like that everybody seems to have a role, and that, on any different night, you've got a handful of guys that could lead the team in scoring and you'll still be okay. This isn't a situation where, like, hey, if this guy isn't going off, Nebraska's in a lot of trouble. They've got some options. Now, they're going to find teams later on down the schedule that they are outmatched against, and that's going to be interesting to see how their cohesiveness and continuity can kind of see if that can overcome some of the talent differential as you get later into the season, especially into Big Ten play. You're going to have some teams that you're just not as talented as. And so Nebraska is going to drop some games just because of that. We talked to Mike Sauter last week about how there's not a ton of, length, athleticism, twitchiness on this Nebraska team, but they do seem to be a very solid basketball team. And so it is going to win you a lot of games. And, last time we talked to John Fanta, he said Nebraska's going dancing. If they continue to play within themselves and play the roles that they need to play, that's definitely on the table. You only have to, they're 5-0 right now. I thought they had to get to 9 or 10 non-con wins in order to get to that number of 18 or 19 in the overall season to get a win there. They still have Kansas State, North Dakota, South Carolina State, and Creighton and Cal State Fullerton on the non-con schedule. So if they can win 4 of those 5, they're in a really good spot. They should obviously beat 3 of those are should wins, right? South Carolina State, North Dakota, and Cal State Fullerton.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Creighton and Kansas State are the best 2 teams on that schedule. Kansas State or Creighton is still undefeated as well. We'll get to them in a second here, but Kansas State has struggled at times already in the early season. I don't know that all of their pieces have slid in as seamlessly as they wanted them to. So Nebraska is going to have an opportunity to get to the number of wins they need. And, there's an opportunity for them to, I thought they'd be an NIT team, but if they go get those 9-10 wins in the non-con and then go 500 in the conference schedule, right, the NCAA tournament's right on the table.
Yeah, they're on pace to do exactly what was predicted of them if they were going to get to a point where they're playing in the NCAA
Oh, and they have Duquesne on Wednesday. I forgot about Duquesne. So they could actually lose both Creighton and Kansas State and still get to 9 non-con wins.
And let's be frank here. Like, they didn't light the world on fire either from the shots that were falling for them, but defensively, that's where they get their money.
Yeah, they only shot 46% from the field. That's not a crazy number. 33% from 3. That's a below average number.
But you hold Oregon State to 35% from the field, 27% from 3. And I don't even take into account their free throw percentage, because you look at it and you're like 61%, like Nebraska needs to be or But if you look at who shot free throws for this team, a lot of them aren't your top guys, young guys, whether it's a transfer or freshman that went 0 for 2 or 1 for 2. But so that's beside the point. Where I really applaud Nebraska is in the rebounding department. They out-rebounded Oregon State 44-31. That's a huge gap, especially when 17 of your boards came on the offensive glass.
Yeah.
That's a ton.
Yeah, that's a great number for them. And if they're able to – and that's an area that's been a problem for Nebraska in the past, especially they haven't run out always the biggest or most athletic teams out there, especially on the front line. That's a great number for Nebraska. If they're able to –
22 second chance points.
If they're able to, and that's a great conversion rate on the offensive rebounds, like you were talking about. If they're able to continue at least sticking in the rebounding margins as they get into Big Ten play, because obviously it's going to get a lot tougher against Big Ten teams, then that'll be a good sign for them. Them not having to shoot the lights out of the ball to beat a team by 20 is a really good sign for them as well. So Fred Hoiberg's team, fact of the matter is Nebraska has lost a lot of these bye games in the last handful of years under Fred Hoiberg. They haven't lost any of those yet. Obviously, Oregon State's not a bye game, but Lindenwood, Florida A&M, Rider, Stony Brook, Duquesne coming up, Cal State Fullerton, South Carolina State, North Dakota. These are all games, and they've still got a few of those left, obviously, but these are games that Nebraska has usually dropped 1, sometimes 2 in the past under Fred Hoiberg. So their ability to not drop one of those so far, to me, is the most important thing. Like, sometimes as a basketball team, as a football team, whatever, we talk about this with Nebraska football all the time, just winning the games you're supposed to win is, to me, half the battle, is getting to the point where you're just like, hey, we can feel confident that this game that we should win, we're going to win. Nebraska football is not quite there yet. Michigan State's a game. They probably need to win that one. They dropped it. But the rest of their losses, you look at it and you're like, it's pretty understandable. It's either coin flip games or games that they were supposed to win and they won. Nebraska basketball is kind of getting to that point where you can trust them. It feels like, we're still early in this year. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but
you don't want to just, you kind of want to come back to reality.
Feels like you can start to trust them at least to win some of these games that they're supposed to win. Now, it'll be interesting to see against Kansas State. That's kind of what I'm keeping my eye on. Obviously, I have no ability to be impartial with Creighton, so I'm just going to skip that one until we get there. But that Kansas State game is really interesting because that's a game where you probably think, hey, Kansas State a little down. They're 3-3 this year, not lighting the world on fire. That's an opportunity for Nebraska to come and get a win against a Power 5 opponent. That's a game in years past where they would maybe drop it. That's one that I'm really going to look at as kind of a barometer for where they've actually made progress as a team. I think that's going to be really interesting and very telling of what we're looking at for Nebraska this season.
And as for Creighton, they're 4-0 too.
Yeah, they're 4-0, looking good. They, you have to be, if you're Greg McDermott, you have to be pretty pleased with how everything has looked. The offense has looked stellar for the most part. They didn't shoot it as well against Texas Southern, and Texas Southern kind of wanted to play that game a little bit slower, certainly slower than Iowa wanted to play, which I said this before. If you're going to try and run with Creighton, like, that's probably a mistake. There's not very many teams in the country that are going to get the better end of a shootout with Creighton. And Creighton, again, they didn't light the world on fire, 46% from the field, 35% from three, although they did shoot 43. So that's a ton of them. But
yeah, that's
pace-wise, pace-wise, that Texas Southern game probably isn't what Creighton would have wanted, but they were still able to come out with a 30-plus point win. They've looked really good so far this year, and their little trip to Kansas City, not quite as sexy as the Maui trip last year, but
I know.
they've got Loyola Chicago on Wednesday, and then the winner of Boston College, Colorado State on Thursday. They really don't honestly, their toughest matchup is probably going to be Nebraska on December 3rd. At least in this early part of the season. Until they get to
like Bama.
Yeah, they go at UNLV, which I think UNLV is okay this year. I'm not going to lie to you and pretend like I've watched them a ton already. And then Alabama is the big one left on the non-con. But with the way Nebraska's playing, that Nebraska game very well could be one of their tougher non-con opponents.
Well, you mentioned that trip to Maui last year, and part of me wishes they had that opportunity again this year because it is such a new look. It may not be a total wash the board, replenish with new guys, but it's
stylistically,
it's a new team. And again, you hit the nail on the head. Stylistically, I'd like to see how they match up against the Michigan States of the world, the Dukes of the world, the Tennessees of the world. Yeah. In my head, I'm trying to remember the other teams.
Syracuse is there. Gonzaga, Purdue.
Can't forget about Chaminade.
Our guy Chaminade.
Our boys from Chaminade. And Purdue is the other big one.
Yeah.
So I would love to see how they match up against that. Now, we won't really get that, as you said, that first tell until Nebraska, until Alabama. And, maybe that's a good thing for Creighton, too, as they still try to create everlasting chemistry among the guys on this team. But, I want to see them tested.
Yeah.
At this point now, I'm like, okay, I know what Creighton offers. Creighton offers the ability to, run up and down the floor and score in transition early and often. They can shoot lights out from anywhere on the floor. They have 5 guys on the floor that create for one another. And I also thought this was Ryan Kalkbrenner's best game so far this season. It got him back into his old ways of last season. So I know all of that. Now I just need to know if you get tested again. And Iowa's a good team. So, let's not forget that they weren't,
I think Iowa
wasn't a strong test. But I want to see a really good defensive team try to slow down Creighton. And if and when they are slowed down, how Creighton adjusts.
Yeah, how they look.
And see if they can still come away with that W.
Yeah, the interesting thing, so Nebraska obviously is probably the best offensive team or defensive team they'll face till that point. And then you always get a lot of challenges on the defensive end, length and athleticism wise, from Alabama, which they'll face in the middle of December. So we don't have to get too much into it on that one yet. But when you look at the Creighton schedule, those are kind of the ones you look at and say, hey, those are going to be the challenges. Those are going to be the opportunities Creighton has to kind of prove it, if you will, in terms of where they're at. I do think they set up the schedule this way kind of on purpose, knowing that they'd be introducing some new pieces, be ramping up a little bit. They tested themselves with Iowa, got the win. They've got they've got a section of opponents that are better than the ones they started with, but not quite as daunting as their Big East schedule will be. And then they start ramping up again with Nebraska. They get a little break with Central Michigan, and then UNLV and Alabama. The UNLV game is interesting because it is a true road game in Las Vegas. So that one will be interesting as well.
And that will be highly attended.
Oh, yeah,
Anytime a top 10 team is in your building, you know that place is going to get sold out, whether it's Creighton fans traveling and helping that cause.
I was going to say, I bet you're going to get a ton of Creighton fans out there because
there were a ton in Maui.
Yeah, there were. And flights to Vegas way cheaper than flights to Maui, obviously.
Oh, I know.
So,
I know all too well.
I was like, you like those flights out to Vegas, don't you?
Yeah, dude. I got to tell you a quick story here, and we'll pivot off of basketball just for a slight sec, so I can tell this story. Yesterday, I had a outstanding bet, courtesy of our friends over at Warhorse Sportsbook. Thank you. I had a rushing prop on the bet that was in my parlay. And so everything had hit. Okay. It was James Conner over 62.5 rushing yards. It was Dalton Schultz to score a touchdown. He actually got, I think, the first touchdown for the Texans. Kyler Murray to rush one in. I mean, the little man scampers, and he found his way in. And Tank Dell's receiving yards props, which hit like in the first 4 minutes of the game because that dude just goes down the field and CJ Stroud hucks, and there he is. So I had, it was all green. I go get some food. I come back. The game is still going on. I check my bet slip, but guess what happened?
What happened?
Remember the Anthony Grant treatment that I had?
Oh,
where,
somebody lost some yards?
James Conner had 65 rushing yards.
Oh, no.
And he lost 3 yards on a run, and it went down to 62.
Ooh,
can you imagine? Can you imagine that being great? You lost 3 yards?
Yeah.
He didn't even fumble. At least AG fumbled it backwards, and that's why I lost. I lost 3 yards on a rush. I don't know about any flights to Vegas anytime soon, except for the bachelor party. That's already planned.
The bachelor party's already planned. Well, and
I wish it was in Maui though.
Right?
I'd go watch basketball.
That'd be pretty sick. The nice thing is you don't have to go to Vegas to play sports bets anymore.
Yep, you're right.
You don't even have to go to Lincoln if you don't want to. Although you can if you're already there.
That's also the problem. It's the fact that it just feeds right into my so-called depression.
You just go right over there to Horseman's Park and you can place bets with our friends over at Warhorse Sportsbook. It's I'm just reading through my timeline here. Little breaking news from our guy Mike Sauter in the Nebraska preps world. Another big retirement in the Nebraska preps world. Jeff Tomlin, head football coach out at Grand Island Senior High, is different.
Different last name?
Different Tomlins.
I thought all Tomlins coach.
Has announced he's retiring from Grand Island Senior High. So big news there. Obviously, Miller North's Fred Petito announced his retirement a couple weeks ago. So a couple of the better coaches in the state calling it a career after this year. So good luck to Coach Tomlin in his retirement and hope he enjoys it.
Speaking of other news, because we didn't get to this was Sauter on Friday because he broke it then too. Carney's basketball coach out too. So because he resigned, which is an interesting story. So what's going on in the coaches world?
I'll say out in the ESPN Tri-Cities area, we got some coaching movement out there with our friends in Central Nebraska. But no, I just wanted to make sure I got that in there. And we're not going to have a ton of time to get to some of the other things today. Obviously, tomorrow we'll get to some stuff as well. And then I do want to give like a little bit of programming note for Wednesday. So we are off Thursday and Friday, just a heads up. So we will be off the air. Shane has put together some terrific best of shows. So if you're still craving some Hurrdat Sports Radio, you'll be able to grab those as well. But Wednesday, our pre-Thanksgiving show, we're going to preview Iowa. Don't worry. We'll get some stuff. We'll have Sauter on too.
And Brian Edwards.
Yeah, of course. Got to get the gambling. We'll get Brian Edwards to help preview the football weekend. We'll have Mike Sauter to recap the high school championships. Andrew and I will do most of the previewing of Iowa by ourselves. But I do want to give you just a little teaser. Planning a super fun show for Wednesday, very holiday themed. So just to get your expectations ready to go. We will be previewing Iowa. Don't worry. There's always plenty of Nebraska football, but we're going to have a good time on Wednesday and send you off into your long weekend and your holiday weekend off right. So I'm super excited about that.
We're on what I call the 3-4 right now.
Oh, not the 3-3-5?
Like
Nope.
the defense?
Yep, like the defense.
How's that, Shano?
3 work days, 4 days off.
Oh,
Around the
all
3-4.
right,
Worst,
all right.
worst. There's worse ways to go.
Can we do like the 3-3-5 sometime? Like 3 work days, 3 sick days, and 5 days off?
Wait, I think that's just a 3-8.
Oh, is it?
I don't know the math there. I don't know. So I guess we're not getting Fanta.
It doesn't look like
I'm
it.
no Fanta of that.
I am not a Fanta of that, as
Hey,
it might be.
TK on YouTube though asked if we can get some thoughts on, or if they can get some thoughts on the UCLA USC football game. He hopes they don't fire Lincoln, because he would hate to see a coach who cares about both sides of the ball coach against Nebraska next year. It's funny because that is complete sarcasm into what UCLA said about Chip Kelly. Hey, no matter what happens in this USC UCLA football game, the guy next year won't be Chip Kelly. You know how hard that is to fire a guy after a big win like that over a rival?
Yeah, especially a rival that is in a significantly has been in a better place than you were. You know, not that UCLA has been terrible under Chip Kelly. It took them a little while to get going, but they've been solid the last few years. But USC had national title aspirations this year. They obviously have the reigning Heisman winner in Caleb Williams as well. And UCLA just goes out and drubs them 38-20. I really don't know what to make of that situation. Like there's so many better ways to handle that if you do want to get rid of Chip Kelly. But I also kind of look at UCLA and I wonder, like, what do they think they are? You know what I mean? Like, or what do they think they're supposed to be as a football program? Because it's not like they have this crazy track record of success. You know, they don't have, I mean, they're not USC with all the national titles and Heisman winners and all this stuff. You know, it kind of seems it's a little Texas A&M-y in that sense, except for without the money, which makes it even weirder. Like Texas A&M thinks they should win because they can pay everybody whatever they want to. UCLA is broke, like broke. And they're still getting winning seasons out of Chip Kelly. Like, I'm not totally sure how much more they should want.
Yeah, you know, I'm just with Chip. I wonder with Fit transitioning over, and I also wonder with like, it doesn't seem like he's done anything to really innovate that team.
Not since.
So that's where I reserve judgment. But Lincoln Riley, I mean, he may need to look in the mirror.
Yeah,
because he blamed everything on Alex Grinch. And I think it could actually fall more on the head coach.
Shane's World coming up next.
We will be back. We will be back. will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio.
Shane's World, party time, excellent.
Okay, right, excellent. Woo! Okay.
Welcome back to Hurrdat Sports Radio on AM 590 ESPN Omaha, ESPN Tri-Cities, and KFOR in Lincoln. It is time for everyone's favorite radio game show, except for Andrew Rogers, who invented the game. It is time for Shane's. Listen, I got two rough ones last week.
Yeah, I know. I did escape last
It
week.
was you were dancing through the raindrops
Well, it was
last
great
week,
too
feeling
because
good.
Avery was here and she took away one of the turns.
She did,
So
yeah.
that was so big.
And I was the only one. I was the only one that ate last week. Terrible. Not a fan. That's okay. I was karmically, I was due some bad ones. I
Yeah, you got too many good ones.
I had hit a pretty good streak there, and I got barf last week, so I think that makes up
dude,
for.
I'm not looking forward to that because there are more of those.
There's a
here.
bunch more barfs in there, so we will.
You guys complain about the game. I mean, I'm the one that's struggling over here.
Oh,
I'm
Shane!
the
Knock
one.
it off, man. Knock it off.
Shane, you just keep yourself over there in your little Charlie Brown treehouse.
Don't blame Shane.
I mean, you're living the good life. You have literally nothing at stake over there. We're the ones.
Except for my reputation.
Well, I mean, I think what we've seen is in line with your reputation, Shane. If you don't remember the game, it is Shane's World. Andrew will give Shane a prompt. We will wager each other on how many topics in that category Shane can name. Whoever.
Mountain Dew, Diet Mountain Dew, Diet Caffeine-Free Mountain Dew.
I gotta tell you, Shane, we'll
real
never
sugar
go back
Mountain
on
Dew.
Mountain Dew.
We'll never go back to, and he still has a name code Red. He still has a name code Red.
I'm sure he didn't name
That
the
Mountain
he
Dew.
brought today.
Baja Blast.
That Mountain Dew is trash.
We bet on the number of things Shane can name in that category. Whoever loses that bet has to spin the jelly bean wheel, and it will give them an option to pick a flavor. That flavor could either be tasty or disgusting. Last week,
one sometimes.
The butter popcorn one's not good. It's not good,
but it's better than rotten egg.
It's also better than barf. So that is the game.
Is it like movie theater?
It is not.
Popcorn.
It is.
You know
not.
what, Shane? Why don't you come try one?
Yeah, why don't you just give it a go
Is
here?
it
See
like,
what happens.
Is it like Orville Redenbacher? I mean, what is it?
You want to come try one of these? Just
No,
pick
I
whichever
think
one you want.
I'm good.
All right, well, let's look at the categories. What do we have this week, Andrew?
We got either we got a top
Ooh.
4. Okay, so
Let's
I'll let you choose first.
Ooh, I like
That's not good.
I like number 3.
Number 3, okay. Well, I gotta do a quick Google search here while you set this up.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with 4.
I think Shane can name. Oh man, 6.
Man, that's
6.
6.
Party on, my guy.
All right.
Oh, hold on. I gotta bring up I forgot I'm the stopwatch guy.
I think you're gonna underestimate Shane in this
Dude,
category.
6 is a lot.
I mean, you also thought 10 colors was a lot, and I'm like, no, it's not.
All right, we ready?
Are we doing colors?
No,
No,
we already
we-
did color Shane.
Shane, okay,
I mean, I can
need
do
you
colors
to name
here.
6, buddy. 6
That's so many.
characters in the Mario franchise. Go.
Princess, Toad, Mario, Luigi, Bowser, and the Ghost Guy. That's 6.
I need a name. That was you. You didn't name Princess.
Yeah, you said princess.
That
But you
Princess-
had 2.
You had Princess.
She's just the princess.
No, she's Princess Peach.
Yeah, it's Peach.
That does not count. You did not get to 6.
Shane,
Also, the
Shane,
ghost guy is not
It's King Boo.
the ghost guy is not a name.
And Shane, when you say princess and there's 2 of them,
There's 2 different princesses. I mean,
that's an easy one. And then think about it, dude. Baby Mario, baby Luigi, baby
I don't think you said
Bowser.
Wario. Come
Come on,
on,
man.
You got 4. That's spin away, my guy.
Shane, Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong.
6 was aggressive. I mean,
6 is easy.
6 was aggressive.
6 is easy. I'm about to get aggressive.
well, you get aggressive on that wheel, man. Get spinning.
This is so
All right, what do we have?
Shane, it looks like Tutti Frutti or Stinky Socks. I'm bordering that peach barf, but you can see.
I think it's Stinky Socks.
It's
Yeah.
on Stinky Socks.
Yeah, I think you're okay.
Is it this guy?
Yeah,
it's this
I think
one.
so. Yeah, let's give it a go.
Let's give it a go. How about? Oh man, this already looks bad.
It looks
Look at
bad.
that yellow.
It's a nasty shade of yellow. Oh, I think he's okay. Nope. Oh, he's making a face.
I think it's Tutti Frutti.
You can't tell.
I don't know. I don't put a lot of stinky socks in my mouth.
Yeah, but you should be able to tell if it's not Tutti Frutti.
I'm gonna swallow it, but I'm not sure.
It smells like Stinky Socks. Like I'm getting a whiff over here. It does not smell like Tutti Frutti. It smells more Tutti than Fruity.
I swallowed it. I'm not too sure.
You might need to go to a doctor if you couldn't tell the difference.
Freaking bats.
Maybe COVID played in my favor
I was
there.
saying, you have the long-term symptoms. You never got your flavor back. Like that's not true. Look, you gagged on.
I don't know. That does.
I don't
it
think that was
leaves a bad-
Tutti Frutti.
I don't think I shouldn't have swallowed that.
No, that smelled bad. I don't know what you
Yeah.
were doing there.
I don't know. I think I just had a lot
This
of
smells
confidence.
delish.
I would say you were making a face like it was dirty socks, but then you just kept chewing. I'm not sure what was going on there.
Yeah. Weird. That was weird.
Kind of a slow burn on that one.
Was that stinky socks?
I think.
Can
it
I try
was.
again?
You can if you want to. He's just a glutton for punishment.
That one's stinky socks.
Yeah, it was definitely Stinky Sock. The first one wasn't.
The first one was Tutti Frutti.
Okay. Well, now we know. I'm glad we. I can't believe you went back voluntarily.
I don't know. I didn't think that was the worst one.
No, I mean, that's fair. But it's because it was the good one.
Like if I said, was that barf? I wouldn't have done barf.
No, for sure. Yeah, absolutely not. All right.
Okay.
Category number 2.
Let's go round 2. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah,
that one was worse.
That was a mistake.
I feel like a dang frog.
Yeah, it smells bad. Put that over on your side. That smells terrible.
You want to smell it?
No, I'm good.
Everyone has to smell your cup. All right, let's go with number 2 here, right here. All right, I will start it off since you started last time.
Okay.
Shane can easily name 5.
Oh man.
Oh. See, we might have
There's a key word.
Yeah, we're gonna have maybe a little debate on what this constitutes as that category. You're saying 5?
I'm saying 5.
I'm gonna let you party on with 5.
Woo-hoo.
I'm gonna let you party on with 5.
All right. Because there are things that I would personally consider not to be.
Right. Yeah.
So we can talk about it after.
We can talk after. We'll let him name his.
Don't stop at 5.
Yeah, don't stop. Just keep going, and we'll decipher winners or losers next time.
All right, Shane. In 10 seconds, name as many classic Thanksgiving foods.
Turkey, ham, potatoes, sweet potatoes, green beans, corn casserole.
Time.
All right, where are we at with some of these?
So ham is not one. I'm not giving you turkey and ham. Ham is Christmas. Turkey is Thanksgiving.
If
you're going classic, you're going classic.
Maybe. That's a borderline one. Okay, he said potatoes.
Which that's not.
It's such a generic category.
Yeah, I'm not counting that.
You're not counting
I don't think he only got to 4 anyway. Because corn casserole came after the buzzer.
Well, he said green beans.
Right, that was 4. So
is green beans a classic?
No,
food?
because
I said sweet potatoes.
Green bean casserole is.
Shane, let me tell you something, man. Let me tell you something.
He's just naming
Shane,
vegetables.
let me tell you something, man. There is a plate that you could have described.
Oh, like pumpkin pie?
That would have counted.
So here you go. You start with turkey. You get your mashed potatoes. You get your
Stuffing.
stuffing.
Cranberry
you
sauce.
You get your whatever. I mean, you could say green bean casserole or whatever.
You got to throw the casserole in there. You can't just throw green beans.
But you could say a vegetable. Like if you had a vegetable of some kind that made sense, I would say that.
Green bean casserole.
A dinner roll.
Corn,
right?
Dinner
Something
roll.
like that.
Yeah.
And pumpkin pie. Like you just describe a plate, you get to 5.
Cranberry sauce.
I don't eat all that crap. I don't eat no green bean casserole.
You said green beans. What do we got?
Oh my. Is that a respin?
Yeah, that's on the. I'm not gonna make you go dead fish. I think that's on the line.
and frankly, it could just be berry blue toothpaste.
Nah, I think it's a respin. I think it's a respin.
All right. Juicy pear or booger? I don't think we've had a booger yet.
I haven't. I had juicy pear and it was pretty good.
We're down to the last one.
I'll say we're down to the.
Oh, this is booger for
this,
sure.
It feels like a booger. Yeah, that's a booger.
You know what that tastes like?
What?
It tastes like celery.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like celery with nothing like on it. Like you know how you have to like dip celery in peanut butter for it to taste good. That tasted just like celery.
I hate celery. It's weirdly one of my.
You know, honestly, I probably would have swallowed that one.
Yeah, not terrible.
Gonna lie.
Not as bad as stinky sock.
Yeah, no, stinky sock. More like
like baby Mario, baby Peach,
Shane,
baby Princess.
Shane,
you missed the boat, man.
All I'm saying is, all I'm going to tell you this is, I'm happy this is a 3-4 week.
Mario,
that's
Luigi.
That's Shane's world for the week. Coming up next, we got the Warhorse Sportsbook Sports Cleanup here on Hurrdat Sports Radio.
We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. We will be back. You're listening to Hurrdat Sports Radio. Things you wanted us to get to from the weekend, but we didn't.
Cleanup on aisle 6.
It's the Sports Cleanup.
Wrapping up this show on a Monday here on Hurrdat Sports Radio, live from the Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill H&H Chevrolet stage. We are here getting ready for the sports cleanup for Warhorse Sportsbook. They are the best place in Nebraska to place your sports bets. You can do it at the casino in Lincoln or at Horseman Park here in Omaha. Make sure you check out the Warhorse Sportsbook, because the app, so you can build your bet and
Bet builder.
Get that all those lines figured out.
Can't bet on Nebraska Iowa this week though,
but
it is a home game.
Are you guys going there after the show?
Nebraska Iowa?
No, to Warhorse.
After the show, no.
No, not on a Monday. I don't have anything to bet on today.
Well, there's plenty to bet
on. I mean,
today.
I don't have anything. Andrew can always find something to bet on. I usually wait for the weekend.
I'm still in the dumps over my my bad beat from this weekend. And you know what's funny? I went 3 out of 4 on 2 and 5 out of 6 on 1. So I had a trio of bad beats, and it's just because, the cards just didn't fall in my favor.
In my pick'em league, I got a little lucky this week. I went 4-1 in the NFL.
Not bad.
But one of them was I didn't feel great about the Minnesota covering plus 2.5, and they ended up losing that game. listen, it's a cover, right? But I don't necessarily feel great about it. And then there was one more. It was a short cover like that on the plus points too, and I don't remember what it was. But the only game I lost this week was I thought the Lions would win by 7. I had them Lions minus 7.5. They don't win it by 5. But I've been doing pretty good on my NFL picks lately.
So college was my claim to fame. I had Maryland plus 19 against Michigan, which was like one of the easiest hits of my life.
Yeah.
Arizona -1 against Utah, also one of the easiest hits of my life. But I was not paying enough attention to the weather conditions in Oregon. Oregon State, Washington.
See, I had Washington
game,
+1.
And I actually took Oregon State -1.5 and juiced it up for me to plus odds. I think it was plus 100 by juicing it just that half point. And it was all I wanted it to be from a stats point of view.
Yeah. I mean, I think the game played
17-1 ATS over the last 3 years at home.
Well, I think the game played out in a way that Oregon State wanted to. Like, that's a game Oregon State can win.
Because they win on the ground.
Yeah, they win kind of that more physical, slug it out. And honestly, I think it's really impressive for Washington to win a game like that. Now, they've won a game against Oregon that could be a little bit more physical. They've won a game against Oregon State that can be a little bit more physical. I think that's actually a good sign for Washington and their college football playoff hopes, which unfortunately for Florida State,
impacted.
Washington's playoff hopes were boosted as even though Florida State won, they had that horrific injury to Jordan Travis, their quarterback, who I think was probably on the outside looking in terms of Heisman finalists, but he had been in that group a lot of the season. But if you haven't seen it, please don't look it up. It's
gruesome.
It is a gruesome lower leg break on a scramble. Just got his foot stuck in the ground and some guy hit his lower leg, and it was really, really bad. I couldn't believe they showed it as long as they did because I don't think the cameraman or the producer understood what they were looking at. But the bottom of his leg was pointed the wrong direction. It was horrifying. Florida State still ends up winning against North Alabama, but as they go into Florida this week and then likely Louisville, I believe it is Louisville for the ACC championship, even if they go undefeated, this is where it's going to get really interesting, is if Florida State and Washington both go undefeated. Washington has the far better strength of schedule. They've got the better wins on the season. I don't think there's a question about that. But also, I think if you're the committee, you have to look at it and say, this is not the same Florida State team with Tate Rodemaker as their quarterback as it is with Jordan Travis as their quarterback. Even if Rodemaker plays admirably and plays well, Jordan Travis is one of the most dynamic players in the country, right? There's a reason he's in that kind of fifth-ish spot for the Heisman. Tate Rodemaker isn't that guy. It's certainly not yet, right? Maybe he ends up being a really nice quarterback at Florida State, but the fact that Florida State is missing their best player, even if both teams go undefeated, I think you have to jump Washington over them.
And I agree, especially because Washington got the big win against the ranked opponent.
And then they'd have another big win in the Pac-12 title game.
Right. And I wouldn't just say, too, that it's because, Florida State lost their quarterback, but the thing to remember is both teams are undefeated.
Right.
So they're interchangeable at that 4 spot. And
like I said, Washington does have the better strength.
And if you go with recency, recency bias, it would be Washington in that spot anyway. And there's also a reason too, that when you see college football on Twitter or like the college football playoff profile on Twitter, point out, hey, who's going to be in the rankings this week? That 1, 2, and 3 are solidified, and 4 is a question mark.
Yeah,
4 wouldn't be a question mark if people felt confident that Florida State still had that locked up. So Washington will make that leap this week. I'm fairly confident to say that. I'd actually put money on that if I could. Florida State will drop to 5.
Yeah.
Oregon State Oregon will. Geez, I almost said it again. Oregon will stay at 6. But if Oregon beats Oregon State this week, I could see a world where they actually jump to 5 and Florida State drops to 6, even with the win against Florida.
Yeah, so I think it's really going to depend on how they look against Florida, right? Not that Florida is a world beater by any means, but if Florida State really takes care of business against Florida, it may give the committee some confidence to say, hey, they really haven't taken that much of a step back. This is still one of the better teams in the country. What I anticipate is even if they beat Florida, I don't think they're going to look the same. And that's not a hot take. Jordan Travis is really good and a huge part of their offense.
And look, Florida played well last week against Mizzou.
They really did. They had the lead late, and Mizzou,
they should have won.
Yeah, Mizzou
should not have in a million years converted a 4th and 17.
Yeah, and they had that last minute field goal to win the game. But yeah, Florida very likely should have won that game against a pretty good Missouri team this year. So I don't think that's going to be a gimme for Florida State by any means, especially with a backup quarterback. But I think they're going to have to really, really impress in the Florida game and the ACC championship if they have any hope. Because even with Jordan Travis, with the schedule that they had going out versus the schedule that Washington had going out, I still think you could have made an argument for Washington being the better team and having the better resume of the two profiles. You put into the consideration, which, because this is human committee rather than polls or computer model, they do take injuries into consideration. And you have to. It's probably not a decider, but it probably is a tiebreaker, right? If you're looking at Washington and Florida State and you're saying, hey, I think they're about even, but you're like, oh, Washington has Michael Penix, Jordan Travis is gone for Florida State. Much of their resume was built on Jordan Travis, right? So you have to take that into consideration the same way the NCAA basketball committee does when they're seeding teams that are dealing with injuries. So that, to me, is going to be the most interesting thing to play out. Now, there is a hilarious nightmare scenario for the committee where Washington loses to Oregon in the Pac-12 title game. You have Alabama beating Georgia in the SEC title game. You have Florida State going undefeated and having no Jordan Travis.
They would beat Louisville, and Louisville's a top 10 team.
Yes, but they would still have no Jordan Travis.
Right.
So they maybe are up at 3 at that point if these other teams lose. But they're still probably not one of the 4 best teams in the country. There is a nightmare. And then you've still got Texas if they win out as a 1-loss Texas team with then a win over an Alabama team that just beat Georgia. You're in a really – there is a couple games that could go a certain way and put the committee in a terrible spot. But it would also be the best advertisement for next year for a 12-team playoff.
It absolutely would. And, I think about this too, because you have teams that are
that bottom
knocking on the door, and you can even, say if Michigan or Ohio State, whoever loses that game, they could be
I
didn't
even bring up Michigan
of being
or Ohio
a borderline
State.
team if all of those scenarios take place. Now, there's a better chance that those two teams will rest in the college football playoff because they're both in the playoff right now. And it would shock me if, say, Ohio State loses to Michigan and Ohio State gets dropped out. It would shock me even if Michigan loses to Ohio State.
I think with Michigan, I think they would drop Michigan out if they lose because of all the stuff.
Maybe.
I think they would use that as an opportunity to say, hey, obviously you're not the same program without Jim Harbaugh as your coach. And I get that he would be back for a playoff, but I think they maybe would use it as an opportunity to penalize them and be like, hey, we don't like how you did these things. And now we have an excuse to drop you out.
And that could be the case. But if all of those things happened, Georgia to me is still automatically in. They are a lock. They are the one. There's no way they drop past 4. Right?
I think that's right.
Same thing with Ohio State being the 2. I don't think there's a world where they drop past 4. Now, Michigan, yes, I could agree that there is a world where they drop to 5. Florida State, there's a world where they drop out. Washington, Oregon, down the line, there's teams that drop out. But I think we have 2 teams in there that are solidified college football playoff contenders.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting because, we haven't even talked about Louisville, who's 10-1. If they beat Florida State, that's a long way to climb. But all of a sudden, you've got an ACC champion in Louisville who's 10-1, and you're like, now I don't think they can get in, right? But let's say
they'll probably move up to 7.
Yeah,
6,
somewhere
7.
between 6 or 7. But I'm not as convinced about the loser of Ohio State. If it is Ohio State, if Michigan loses, I think they're out. I think the playoff committee will penalize them. I'm not as convinced that an Ohio State loss keeps them in either. It's going to be really interesting to see because there's just too many teams with a good resume. And we're going 9 deep right now with 1 loss or less, which is a fantastic scenario for college football fans and an absolute nightmare for the college football.
That's interesting to see
committee.
the NCAA using Michigan as a wild card in their back pocket. If they lose, they're out.
That's what I would do if I was the playoff committee. Coming up tomorrow, we've got Shafe, as we always do. We're going to preview Iowa and Nebraska, as well as Ohio State and Michigan. Andrew Rogers, Ravi Lulla, Shane Schillerberg will be back tomorrow.